Good morning, Council and guests. Just giving you a 5 minute heads up that we will be returning from recess in 5 minutes, and we still do have our headshots open. So feel free to grab one of those free headshots for you to use.
Wyoming is more than one.
So, ET, you know what Monday is? What's Monday? Just wanted to make sure that you don't forget that. Yeah, I mean, I know you're not going to go to work and all, but you know.
All right, it is 8:30. Good morning. Good morning. So I'm going to go ahead and call the council back from recess with the gavel. So yes, happy, what is today? Today is Thursday. Happy Thoughtful Thursday. And welcome back. Just kind of do a quick rewind of what happened yesterday. Yesterday, I think, was a really great day. We got a lot of stuff done. We began by doing roll call and introductions. We approved, yes. What's that? Oh, is there an echo? Oh, see, it's not, it's over there. Yeah. We've got one TV to mute. You don't want to hear the chairman twice? I don't want to hear myself either. All right, so let's see. Oh, is that better? There we go. Thank you. Yeah, so then we approved our agenda for the Q4 meeting. We also then approved our minutes from September. Gave all of you a little bit of an update on how we're moving the council forward, some potential changes. Then we got an update from Director Gagan on some important things around the Department of Workforce Services. We approved our spending plan and expenditures. We reviewed 2 contracts, one for Collaborative Economics and one for Onboard, and both of those were approved. And then we had a really great discussion, thoughtful discussion around the one-stop operations procurement process and RFP versus RFI versus bid exception request. And we voted to move forward with an RFI on that process. And then we got an update around our MOU from Jennifer. We took a nice break. And then we also heard a lot about childcare, which is, again, the reason we decided to bring in the Wyoming Business Council for that discussion was it comes up a lot when it comes to workforce development, and a lot of states are struggling with this and trying to figure out what could be potentially a great way for Wyoming to move forward with providing childcare. And then we attempted to watch a Forge Your Future teaser trailer, but due to technical difficulties and getting to our on-site tour of Blue and visiting the booth center, we're not able to do that. So we are going to kind of kick it off before we do roll call and introductions. We'll go ahead and kick it off with the Forge Your Future trailer, and fingers crossed, I think they said it works.
Wyoming is more than wide open spaces. It's a place of opportunity where people can build careers, chase their dreams, and thrive in their communities. The Forge Your Future campaign showcases the opportunities available for Wyomingites to begin or transform their careers in the Cowboy State's key industries: tourism, construction and trades, healthcare, and manufacturing.
Opportunities in Wyoming at this point in the construction industry is huge. There's construction happening everywhere, and there's no signs of it slowing down for at least the next decade.
Forge Your Future shares stories of how our residents are forging their futures right here in Wyoming.
It means a lot to me to be able to work here in Wyoming and to be trained here in Wyoming. It's a blessing.
I think there are great opportunities in Wyoming for workers in the trades in general.
Professionally crafted videos bring Wyoming's workforce opportunities to life through interviews with folks who've made career transitions, found educational opportunities, and are now thriving in high-paying roles across these industries. Wyomingites are driving our state's future. Through bold and inspiring branding, the Forge Your Future campaign captures Wyoming's grit, hardworking spirit, and the unearthed opportunities awaiting job seekers. Forge Your Future is more than a campaign. It's a call to action, and we're excited to set it free as a resource for those ready to take the next step in their careers. We'll make Wyoming the go-to place for raw opportunity, growth, and success. Let's forge the future together.
Nice. Yeah, I was gonna say thoughts, council. I like it. Again, this is just kind of a teaser, right? So we're still obviously working through this. There's going to be multiple videos that are going through, as we mentioned yesterday, going through production. But I think it's a great start. So it's good to see this project finally begin to come to life. All right. Well, we're going to go ahead and move on to roll call. I know there are a few folks in the room that maybe were not here yesterday. So for those of you who are joining us for day 2, whether online or here in person, would you mind introducing yourself? I think I see one new face. Yes.
Look at me get the technology. Good morning, everyone. My name is Corinne Livers, and I'm the Economic Security Senior Administrator for the Department of Family Services. And I am here on behalf of Corinne today. So good luck with Corinne and Corin. If you want to just say Corin, I will answer.
Good to know. Thank you. And then I also believe we have Ben joining us today.
Good morning. Yes, I was sitting back there yet last time. Now I'm closer. So, but thank you for having me.
Yes, glad to have you. Anyone else that is joining us for the first time on day 2 or online? All right, hearing none, I will go ahead and ask Jennifer to do roll call, please.
Governor Mark Gordon or designee.
Present.
Senator Fred Baldwin. Representative Ryan Berger. Ron Wild.
Present.
Tony Cross.
Present.
Dick Smith. Chairman Eric Trowbridge.
Present.
Larry Fodor.
Present.
Michael Kircher.
Present.
Bria Hammock.
Present.
Deborah Zalnowski.
Present.
Wendy Fiskett-John.
Present.
Tina Conley.
Present.
Nathan Williams. Philip Cornella.
Present.
Brenda Morgan.
Present.
Danny Bureau.
Present.
Charles Wilson. Dan Meyer.
Present.
Matthew Davis.
Present.
Director Elizabeth Gagan.
Present.
Nikki Harper.
Present.
Mayor Matt Hall. Katie Hogarty.
Present.
Travis Lawrence.
Present.
Ben Moritz or designee.
Present.
Superintendent Degenfelder or designee.
Present.
Corinne Schmidt or designee.
Present.
Josh Durrell or designee. Mr. Chairman, you have a quorum.
Thank you, Jennifer. All right, moving on to our first agenda item of the day, which is agenda item number 16. This is one I've been looking forward to for a long time. As I mentioned in my chairman address back in September, something I'm really passionate about is as we go and visit different communities and cities around the state of Wyoming, that why not we learn more about what is going on in that city, state workforce development. And so we're going to be looking at, trying to onboard, bringing in the mayor, local economic development agency, tourism, the arts and creativity, and kind of get a sense of what is going on. And so we can have some really thoughtful discussions around that. So this is our first time doing it. And we have our Cheyenne local panel, and we've got 3 movers and shakers here in Cheyenne that have very unique perspectives. We have a perspective on tourism. We have a perspective on arts. And we have a perspective on economic development. So please welcome our 3 panelists up here, and we'll go ahead and begin the conversation. I know. I'm like, we're just gonna stare at you as you slowly walk up. Like, look at our panelists. Yeah. Well, great. Well, to kick it off, first of all, thank you to the three of you for being here. I'm super excited to kind of dive into your minds and hear more about what's going on in Cheyenne and how it's pertaining to workforce development here in the state. And so I guess we'll kind of kick it off with just some quick introductions. So I was kind of thinking maybe, obviously your name, kind of what your role is, and then how long have you been in Cheyenne and how did you kind of get into your role and what is your thing that you're most passionate about Cheyenne? So I guess, yes, this makes sure we'll turn on the mic and I guess,
That's a lot. You should have warned me about all those questions. I'm Rochelle Zimmerman. I am the Director of Business Recruitment and Retention for Cheyenne Leads. And actually at the moment, I'm also acting CEO, handling the daily operations as our CEO is out on some medical leave. I've been with Leads for 10 years. How I got in economic development, man, nobody goes to college or, graduates from high school and goes, man, I want to be an economic developer when I grow up. So it was kind of a slow path. I was a senior executive for Macy's. I worked for Wyoming Tribune Eagle in marketing. So marketing is kind of how I ended up in the economic development field. I did grow up here, graduated from the University of Wyoming, left for 10 years, and then came back with when my kids were 1 and 3. Most passionate about, wow. I think it's the community in general. I think it's a blessing and sometimes not. No matter where you go, somebody, and it's the best way to get work done is when you run into people casually. And I think that's something really special about Cheyenne.
Awesome. Thank you, Rochelle. Bria.
Hey, all. I know you heard from me yesterday, but I'll give you the Spark Notes again. Bria Hammock, it's nice to see all of your faces this morning. The reason I'm sitting here is because I am a fine artist. I own a gallery downtown. But my day-to-day job, I am a vice president at a travel and tourism marketing agency. So maybe can be part of a couple of these conversations here today. I have been in Cheyenne, man, I think 15 years next month. I grew up on the East Coast and moved out here, and it absolutely kind of just got under my skin and in my blood in the best way, in a very unexpected way, I guess. And I think that the biggest thing that I love about being here, particularly as an artist, is the opportunity to have a seat at the table, actually, in a way that you would not be able to in a larger city. There would be a million other painters standing right behind me, vying for the same opportunity. And so such a really cool opportunity to be involved as much as you want to be here. So
I don't know how I follow that with those amazing stories. First of all, just want to thank the staff and also the council. The work you do is so critical and also not easy. So greatly appreciate what you do for our community and our state. So thank you for that. Dominic Bravo, I'm the CEO for Visit Cheyenne. I actually started my career as a law enforcement park ranger in Nevada. So kind of a unique path than most people. Moved here in 2008. I was the state park director for the Division of State Parks and the Outdoor Rec Office for about 11 years. Did a brief stint over at UW as a professor in the new Outdoor Rec and Tourism Management degree program. I've taught off and on at LCCC in the Certified Public Manager program. Did a couple weird random things. And then I was on the board of Visit Cheyenne. And when my predecessor stepped down, I put my name in the hat and very blessed that they offered it to me. Of course, that was January of 2020. So not the best timing to be in tourism, but I am here. Similar to what the ladies mentioned, I think my passion is the people of not just our community, but the state. I got to see a lot of just a lot of amazing people, and they're what make our destination special. So that's what I'm pretty passionate about.
Great. Again, thanks for being here. And so I thought we'll start at the 30,000 picture view, and then we've got some very more specific related questions that we'll get to. We probably won't get to all of them. We'll obviously make use of our time effectively, but I guess I was thinking maybe each of you could provide us with kind of a state of Cheyenne, of city, based on your perspective. So Rochelle talking to us, like, what is kind of the overall 30,000 foot view of the economic development strategy, and how is economic development strategy happening in Cheyenne? I know. Good morning. It's 8:40, and putting you on the spot for a bunch of people. I was kind of say with Bria, what is your feeling of the overall arts and creativity culture that's here in Cheyenne, and then obviously Dominique talking about where we're at to the high level view from tourism. So, who would like to go first? You want to start, Rochelle? Picking on you today.
No, that's great, because then I get to say the things first, so it doesn't come from them before it comes from me. Wow, that's a really big question. Economic development, I'll kind of stick to that. I think we're in this place of wondering who we are and trying to figure out where we're going. We have so many prospects coming our direction. There's so much interest. I have 13 data center developers on my books right now, not data center companies, but actually developers, because with the expansion of Microsoft and obviously the Meta announcement in July, everybody knows we're here all of a sudden. And so us trying to figure out how we decipher who's good for the community, who's bad for the community, and what kind of companies do you really want here? Because we can't take all takers. So we have to take housing into consideration. We have to take our other companies into consideration. But I have to tell you, if we can figure out those questions of how to serve them with housing and workforce, Cheyenne is in this really pivotal point where we can see a lot of growth, or depending on community support, we could also see it kind of slow down. But we are one of the locations that people are really in industry looking at right now. So we can choose who we want to be.
That's great. And yeah, I mean, so those who didn't know, there's that announcement in July about Meta, and they're like, Wyoming is very much being looked at as kind of this data center, and we all know that AI, humanoid robots are, very much in our near future, and those things require a lot of power and a lot of data, and that's actually kind of in the Wyoming's roots and history, right? As we're known for energy, and now we get to supply energy in a new and unique way that's going to affect humanity forever. So thank you. Great. Great. What about arts and creativity in Cheyenne? How do you see that?
So I feel like it's a little bit of a two-pronged thought. So to piggyback on what you're saying, absolutely. From a arts and culture in Cheyenne, it's percolating. We are at a really interesting kind of precipice and crossroads of truly figuring out who we are, who we want to be, and then encouraging those folks who participate in the arts and culture to really find their own and find their voices, and bring that to the forefront, because it's really apparent that it is only a certain type of artist and a certain type of creative that does want to play in the public space. We typically are inclined to be incredibly introverted and paint things and put them in our basement, and not ask for any support and all of the things. And so I think, coming from the seat of an artist, it is so incredibly important to have the support of the community to encourage that and make it feel valuable. We all find it valuable because we love it. I love putting paint on a canvas. I love it even more when someone else enjoys it as well. And so that connection isn't made unless the community is supportive. And I have seen such incredible strides in community support here for all of those things, which is amazing. At this point, we do have a little bit of a critical mass of how much fine art can be supported. I think even from a fiscal perspective, Cheyenne doesn't have a bunch of cities that are right next to us, and we are able to pull people from that. And so I think that in my mind will continue to change as the Front Range encroaches and, those sorts of things happen over maybe the next decade. I think my other thought on creativity in Cheyenne is really interesting and definitely pulls more from my experience. I have been in corporate creative for about 20 years now. I grew up as a graphic designer, have jumped into creative leadership in the last decade, and now just recently jumped back out of creative leadership into leadership in general, I guess. And so it's really interesting in that for the most part, I have been working at out-of-state agencies, and then bringing everything I am reaping, all of the knowledge, all of the financial pieces back into the state to then support the community things that I'm doing as an artist. So truth be told, from a corporate creative standpoint, there are not the jobs to support a bunch of us doing graphic design, doing these things at a really high level in Cheyenne. I do see that changing eventually, but right now it's also encouraging folks to potentially find their day somewhere and then bring all of those things back to here that we can kind of benefit from. Like I said, the education there and pulling creativity and inspiration potentially from elsewhere and making it our own.
Actually makes a great transition for me. Although I hate when I have a mic, I feel like I should give you guys a song for the morning. Like, hello, I'm Johnny Cash.
You may.
With my voice kind of trembly. So for us, the creative economy is a key for tourism. Obviously, we're part of economic development. I think the big thing is when you say Visit Cheyenne, what we consider ourselves as a destination management organization. It's what we've been calling ourselves for a few years now. We cover all of Laramie County, from Quebec one, technically we include Chugwater because they have no one really supporting them, out to Pine Bluffs, down to Terry Bison, and all the way out to Kurt Gowdy. So it's a way for us to think about us holistically. And the way that the DMOs, so destination management organizations, look at the world is thinking about, well, how do we make our destination that great for a resident? Because if it's great for a resident, then of course it's great for someone to come visit. And if it's great for someone to come visit, obviously business has to thrive there. And it's that circular motion that comes down to that first visit, that first date of our community is critical. So we put a lot of our funding into everything from promotion, as was just mentioned in the creative economy. If we didn't have the artists and the amazing things we have going on, we wouldn't have people writing about us. So we have hosted many writers. So we just got called the Nashville of the West. Awesome. It's something that's great. Forbes called us one of the art meccas of the world. So being able to do that and leverage our relationships with PR and marketing firms is only reliant on being able to support, things like the creative economy. And we do so not just with, our marketing, we even give sponsorship dollars. We support things like Art Cheyenne, all of our music venues, events, all of those things. We give sponsorship dollars to them. We give marketing support to. And that comes into that feedback loop to ensure we're kind of supporting the destination and the community at all levels. I would say then outside of that, in 2020, we unveiled our tourism master plan. It was a 10-year plan, and we tried to fill in the gaps. And a lot of that came down to some of the events. Obviously, we're known for Cheyenne Frontier Days, world's largest outdoor rodeo and Western celebration. But sometimes when people travel, they also want to see other rodeos. So we created our Hell on Wheels Rodeo series. We do a lot of things themed in that space, like Old West Holidays coming up. And we also have some indoor events, although we do one that's not really, I guess it's kind of Western themed. We do full contact jousting. So medieval jousting in February out at Archer. It's kind of Western in a different kind of way. And there's horses and, full contact. It's very, Wild Westish. So then on top of that piece, then we kind of do all the other pillars of support to try to figure out how we help and support that economic development piece. So I think those are kind of where we are at that 30,000 foot, and we're really doing really well. I will say, I think, Rochelle mentioned it. It's kind of this weird roller coaster ride, especially after the pandemic. We've seen great visitation, but of course, other destinations have opened up. This last year, I think inflation has really impacted us. So we saw Q1 was low, June was record breaking, July was a little low, August was record breaking, and we're going into the fall, winter with a little bit of extra people visiting, but it impacts how people spend their dollars. So sales tax. If you're a family, you come in, you're like, well, we're going to go to Cheyenne Frontier Days. We're going to spend a little bit of money on a hotel. It's a little more expensive than we're used to, but we're not going to Ribbon Shop. We're going to go get McDonald's. I mean, that's where that space where you do trip planning comes into play. So folks are still traveling. Folks are still coming to see us. We're a really major primary destination, but it has been a little interesting with inflation these days. So we'll see what holds for us the next few years.
Great. Thank you all for sharing. You're giving me a lot of great council team building activities, jousting, maybe a karaoke night. So get ready, council, get your stuff going. But so now kind of moving into some more specific questions. And, the three of you, feel free to, if you feel like you have something you'd like to speak to on this, feel free. And so I'm going to start with a theme that came out from the council, which was really around community and government engagement and how your organizations engage with the community and government. So successful economic development requires collaboration. We all know that, right? How have you engaged government entities and the local community to align with your objectives and drive progress?
I think we just infiltrate everywhere we can. I mean, it's one of those things we're really bad about tooting our successes, about tooting our own horn and saying, hey, we're here. We provide our staff. They serve on everything from Rotary to Kiwanis. I try to present to anyone and anyone who wants to listen to what's going on. A lot of it's just because we need their support going forward when we think about how you market and provide tourism. We have a lot of trailblazers that, some amazing folks in our community. Obviously Bria is one of them, one of those trailblazers. We need to actually have, citizens that are willing to step forward and be our personalities when it comes to our amazing community. So it's trying to figure out all those things. So we engage at every level that's feasible. And then myself personally, I sit on our, statewide association, our regional and our international association. So it's making sure that our brand is out in the mix and our voice is in the industry across the board. So even our new legislators after the recent election, I'm already making meetings to meet with them and our new city council and all those folks. So we're, interacting with them on every level.
Can I hop in on that a little bit further? Because Dom is being humble. So the Visit Cheyenne, he mentions the Trailblazers program in particular. Just want to put a couple more words around that. From travel and tourism, we have seen so much success in telling these stories of the destination. So obviously, like you said, we've got all of our pillars, right? The CFD, downtown, all of the things that bring people. But the thing that truly connects people is these layers of people in the community that they can come meet, they can support their businesses. And so Visit Cheyenne, humbly maybe at this point has been forwarding so many of these stories. So they are about to release their second cohort of Trailblazers, myself included in that second group, of people who are kind of moving and shaking in all of those different pillars and allowing us to really come to the table and tell our stories from a travel and tourism perspective to really connect it with that economic development at the end of the day. So it's pretty cool. And just wanted to let you all know about it.
So this is my favorite question because it's probably the most important thing that we do or that we offer to prospect companies. So companies come to us a lot of different ways. Sometimes it's a site selector, but more and more we're seeing that companies are doing this work themselves. So let me back up. I can mimic everything Dominic says. We participate in all the organizations. Last night we were just discussing, I spoke to the First Presbyterian Mariners group of 60 people that all hated the idea of economic development when I stood up. So we're out there because our biggest challenge is misinformation and bad information, both the same thing, but both very painful. And so getting the correct information is very important. For us, what makes us very successful in Laramie County and Cheyenne in economic development is really our government officials. Because as I travel the United States meeting with other economic development organizations, the number one challenge is their governments not being on board. We have a very supportive city council and county commissioners, the planning commission, because we make sure we go on a regular basis. We update them on what is happening in our community, what we're going to be needing. Around election time, once we kind of get through the primaries, we meet with the candidates that are willing to meet with us to explain what we do prior to them getting in office. We've already extended additional invitations. We have 2 new members of our city council that were just elected. I've already emailed them the day after the election, congratulating them and asking them to come in. Having access to the governor's office, you don't understand how important that is. When we're able to have a prospect come into town and we can say, sure, the governor will meet with you. That speaks to these companies because all these companies really want is to be wanted because they're usually leaving their communities because they're feeling like they're being kind of squeezed out or maybe their politics don't fit. So when you have that access to government, it makes a big difference. Once we're into the process of actually building, like say a data center, I can get a call from Fortis Construction that says, hey, we can't get a fire inspector out here. We're running behind. I can call the mayor and say, hey, we're having a problem with this. Guess what? He calls the people and says, hey, you need to get out there. That sounds like, it's kind of a big flex, but it's not. It's just the efficiency of government. And so having those relationships with the government and then having those relationships with the community is really how we get things done. And I really think that that is the very core of why Cheyenne leads and Cheyenne has been successful in the economic development field.
Yeah, all great stuff. And, the next question, you kind of all 3 of you touched on it. It's about retaining and, talking about the Trailblazers program, right? Giving our entrepreneurs and our business folks that opportunity to really shine and have the connections they need to make their businesses grow. There's so many stories out there. One that comes to mind, how many of you have been to the Lincoln Theater for a live show here in Cheyenne? It's in downtown, is it? Few hands? Yeah, truly. Yes, it truly is a world-class music venue. And you think about just that one particular story that used to be, it was built for live performances. This beautiful building, the acoustics in there, like when they came and actually remodeled it. I remember Renee Yelnick, who's the owner, mentioned that they renovate these older places all the time, but they said we never really worked. This building was meant for live music, and I'm glad that and before that, it was on schedule to get raised and made into a parking lot for for an office building next door. And so it was just super cool to see how many different entrepreneurs in Cheyenne, like, no, can we do more? And having the resources and being able to reach out to folks like Dom and Rochelle and the mayor and the governor's office, and helping them realize their potential and opportunities. So, and it's those kind of things that keep and retain core people that are going to be the movers and shakers, but also keep and retain and attract businesses, right? So, if you work for a company, they're like, oh yeah, we're relocating to Cheyenne. You're like, what? Where is that? What is the culture in Cheyenne like? So the next question really is about, the competitive landscape, so we compete, with Colorado a little bit, but we kind of, what strategies, or do you know of any strategies that you have currently been a part of that have been implemented in Cheyenne to attain or attract businesses or individuals, keeping those really trailblazer folks rooted here and giving them the opportunity to grow, especially given the competition from some of our neighboring regions?
Well, I think even the recruitment piece is interesting. There's a whole bunch of components, and I'm glad you brought up the Lincoln. It's one of those things that I think even at a resident level, so obviously we market for the Lincoln. We're our first section of Trailblazers. They have a great story to tell. But for the traveling public, obviously we have shoulder seasons, and even, our winter can be a little bit, intense. So when folks aren't traveling to us, how much does that community support those venues to ensure that they thrive past there? So I've had numerous, discussions with John and Renee, just trying to figure out how we support them. So we actually sponsor that venue to try to help them, weather the troughs that they go through. But they have a marketing budget, and they market in every sector you can think of, and then we market as much as we can. Not just them, of course, all the others, Outlaw, you name it, any other music venue that's in existence. But the hard part is, and I think it comes down to some of the other questions that were in that docket, and I'm in the marketing business, is sometimes we don't actually meet people where they are. So we talk about trying to figure out how you recruit and retain employees. In the hospitality and tourism sector, most of the times when I go out and I talk to high school kids, they have no idea what the hospitality and tourism sector is. Or we put on events like the jousting one isn't a great example. And we hit every local, regional, you name it. And when it goes on, people are like, I didn't even hear about this till now. It's like, well, where are you getting your information? And it still seems like there's a gap between, where we put this information out. And I know the state doesn't do TikTok, or it's a bad word and all that other stuff. But even YouTube, the reels, all that stuff, we still don't seem to engage with a lot of the population of the folks that we want to be in those sectors. So when you talk about workforce retention and all of those things, it takes a really concerted effort. And it's usually like at the base level of going after, we're really fortunate to have some amazing trailblazers in our community, but we have to seek them out. Ag tourism that we've been working on recently on the east side of the county, farmers and ranchers, as they look for other economical ways to do stuff, they just don't think about it unless you go out and reach out to them. It's like, hey, there's so many people that would love to tour your farm. If we could figure out how to help you with some staffing, how to help you with the logistics. And so we've been trying to figure out to do just tours through the summer. So it's a way we sell the tickets, we, give the revenue back to them. They find times to schedule where they get some, internship staff to go and help them, tour their organic farm in Laramie County. So it's a great way to think about that piece, but there's so many little moving parts to that. That I think there's, those many layers that come into play. And I said, I don't have all the answers. I think there's more questions in there than what I gave you answer wise, but I think that's the difficulty with recruiting and retention is like, we really need to be a little more, thoughtful and innovative in where we meet people to actually get them to come into our state. And for that matter, retain them to realize that there are so many different ways that are successful in tourism. Folks don't even realize, the creative economy, the ag tourism, all of those things are part of tourism and hospitality. And most youth have no idea. So
I'm going to kind of take off. You kind of went to another question, but I think that's actually really good because Tourism for us is a doorway for economic development. It's a really important tool because that's a lot of times how a person will first come into the community to attend an event. Maybe they're coming for Frontier Days or they're just driving through, and some of the work that Dominic has done over the years pulls people in. I actually had a call the other day, a gentleman and his wife were driving through. It was the weekend of Edge Fest, and they actually stopped and had a great time. They said, like, wow, we couldn't believe this kind of event was in Cheyenne, Wyoming. And he called me because he was down in Colorado and he and his wife were thinking about moving up here. I said, well, make sure you come and visit on a regular day also, because those events are wonderful. But so it is a doorway. We see that a lot of the time with economic development. As far as community development, which is where I think we kind of started the question, it's a really big part of what workforce looks for. And we make sure we market that kind of in conjunction. I would say that tourism and our organization are kind of casual friends. We use a lot of what they do. Hopefully, what we do helps draw population. But community amenities are really important. But from my standpoint, it comes more down to who we're recruiting. And when we decide how much we're going to help a company, if we're going to incentivize them, we want to make sure they're good community partners and they're willing to look and they donate to the museum or they sponsor events. We want them to be really good community partners. We also want to make sure from a workforce standpoint that they're not operating in a vacuum. We don't want companies to just come in and hire people from the outside and bring them in, because then you have this real disconnect between the company and the workforce and the community itself. So that's why we like to work with LCCC, and Microsoft's a great example. They came in and created a program and provided scholarships to students at LCCC to provide training. So instead of bringing in these people from the outside, and suddenly you increase that gap, that financial gap or that income gap, because you still have the people, the residents down here, and up here you have these people working for Microsoft. We wanted to bring the community up. So for us, that's part of that big picture of community development, is actually the training of that workforce to make sure they're not left behind. So I think I answered like 3 questions.
Yeah, you guys are on a roll this morning. I love it. Yeah, it's I mean, there's all of you had like so many segues to some of the other things, because when I was in the NGA conference last week, it was last week, hard to believe. I don't know, like when we grow, every community, cities large to small, and you bring in a business, and there's all of these other components. Where are they going to live? Are there enough jobs? Do we have a skilled workforce? So, the success of our local economy depends on being able to. What do you see as some challenges to our ability to grow and retain and attract new people, knowing that we're also one of those cities that struggles with healthcare and childcare, housing? Do you have any perspectives on that?
So for us, some of the challenges for growth, of course, is housing. It's always going to be workforce. Every company or site selector that contacts me, the very first question is, well, first they ask, how much money can you give me? That's always question number 1. What's the state of Wyoming going to do for me? The second is about workforce. And I say, you know what, I'm not going to lie to you. I'm not going to tell them something that isn't true. I say workforce is an issue here. However, workforce is an issue everywhere. So I don't think we're unique in that. So I kind of shove that aside. We are getting to a point in Cheyenne and Laramie County where we need to be very thoughtful, which I mentioned before, because even though Wyoming looks like the wide open spaces, you really have to look at infrastructure development and what you can sustain. How much water do you have? How much power from our standpoint of industrial development? We're very lucky. Black Hills Energy is our provider and our partner, and they've never told me no yet. There may be a little bit of a delay just so we have more data centers coming on, but I think you really have to consider maybe some infrastructure challenges that will limit growth and how you're going to take advantage of what you do have. Workforce. Oh, and then again, that bad information, that's a real challenge for economic development and growth of our community, is just bad information, because I think that people don't understand the big picture all they really see is, oh, we have all these companies coming in and they're bringing in all these people. And the prairie isn't as beautiful as it used to be because there's a data center. So I think one of the ways you overcome that challenge is just education, explaining that they can either pay the property tax or you can. That one usually gets them. They usually come over to my side with that one. But I think you just have to look at what your barriers are and see if they're realistic to overcome. And for us, those are kind of our challenges.
I can jump in from a more arts and culture standpoint. I think our biggest challenge is, and I think I already mentioned this, is just support generally. And I think that that's absolutely on the upswing. It is really interesting, talking about the pandemic, coming off of that. I think particularly in rural communities, arts and culture is thought of as a little bit fluffy, maybe the Cool Whip on top of the thing. It is not, taken as seriously as other larger metropolitan areas, but I think the silver lining that the pandemic did for us in arts and culture is showed us that that's what gets us through. And that was a really interesting thing coming out of that very difficult time for everyone sitting in this room. We were able to escape. We were able to binge watch our Netflix shows. I have not sold more art than I did during the pandemic because people wanted their walls to look happy. And that was just a really interesting thing coming out. And I just hope that we can continue to support folks remembering that and remembering truly how important arts and culture are to them in their daily lives, even though sometimes it's easy to put it on the shelf when we're in the middle of all of the other tough stuff.
I feel like I sometimes bring myself down as like a Debbie Downer, but it's one of those, I think it was brought up. We're in such a unique community being, the amazing capital city, but still rural, we're small. And it comes down to what, Bria mentioned is we get a lot of flack for when a downtown business closes. It's like, why did that business close? It's my favorite business. And you ask, well, when was the last time you were there? Well, I hadn't been there for a year. And then they complain about box or, these box stores, those types of things, that Del Range effect. And it's one of those things I think as a society, just in general, we don't shop the way we used to. I mean, Amazon is our friend. Do we go down and support our local businesses? And luckily we have 2 Christmas times. So, I mean, when Cheyenne Frontier Days is here, we try to push a lot of folks to our, smaller mom and pop retailers, our restaurants and those things. But we also then need, as I mentioned, the Lincoln Theater in my earlier conversation, is we need our communities, our residents to support those businesses outside of those times. So a lot of times it's changing the mindset about how you do stuff. Sometimes that amazing piece of art is that more intimate, thoughtful present than it is getting that, $500 gift card off Amazon. And I think that's all of society. And that's the difficulty that we face. We did a survey for restaurants. What kind of restaurants do you want to see? We keep having this complaint. We don't have enough restaurants here. Why can't we be like Fort Collins, blah, 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 that type of thing. We sent out the survey came back and it's like, well, we want mom and pop ones. We want these ones and all this stuff. Then we asked them to list it. And of course they start listing nothing but franchises. It's like, well, that's not a mom and pop restaurant. So it's really a lot of the times is trying to rethink how, society thinks about those types of things. So from an infrastructure standpoint, it's really hard for a business to come in and be supportive unless their business model thinks about that boom bust cycle and how much we engage residents. That's why, like for Old West Holiday, and like I mentioned, it's half and half. We try to make sure we're inviting half that is tourism. We want tourists to come in, spend their money, sales tax. We're also trying to entice residents to come downtown, visit all of the different businesses, Old West Holiday. So it's those types of mindsets where you try to think about figuring that out going forward. And then as Rochelle mentioned, anytime we do any destination development things, it is in that mindset of how can we bring amenities, destination development thoughts that make it, again, a great place for us to live, but also another tourism thing, even if it's the greenway. It may sound simple, but not all communities have a great connected greenway. It's a huge, recruitment tool from a destination development standpoint. But like I said, I think there's multiple layers. And again, the great work you folks do, there's some things you can't really address with just like this. I love your marketing thing that you guys did. It tries to drive in passion of forging this future. And that's the thing is sometimes you need to also get the residents to think, okay, how am I going to help make sure my community is successful? I probably should go downtown and buy my Christmas gifts there versus, spending my money at Amazon.
I think there's just an interesting thing to add to that too, just from my personal perspective. I'm really lucky that I have come from a marketing background. I understand kind of all of those ups and downs and how to structure a business around it. So my my gallery is very tourism focused in the summer and then very much switches to kind of a local centric array of things and art and stuff the rest of the year. And I think that that's why I have been seeing success. But then that whole, for me, exactly as you said, coming to business owners where they sit, not assuming that they understand that and not assuming that they understand how to build their businesses to solve for these problems. And so interesting, just opportunity for education from multiple groups of, you know, providing that to those business owners to really understand how to pivot and be agile and in our multi-Christmas sort of environment around here. So.
Yeah, all great points. And I think, you know, the point you made, Bria, around being agile, I mean, that's true of all small business. Like you've got your core business plan, but being able to wiggle around and kind of move your way through the economy as it goes up and down and tourism ways and not tourism ways, you know, that's really what truly sets you apart, you know, and determines how long you're around for, right? So something that's, you've kind of all talked about it, it's all kind of boiling up. Like Cheyenne is absolutely, I believe, in a really unique position where this is where we're kind of at that, like the pot is starting to go, you know, you don't know whether it's going to calm down or if actually we're going to see that big steam thing. And there was a video I watched on YouTube years ago, and it talked about the power of a city's brand and its personality. And the talk was actually, if you Google it, it talks about the city. I can't remember where it was, but they focused on their flag first. They knew their community, their city was going to change, and they wanted to kind of create a brand. You know, this is who we are. This is what we stand for. And they started by just re-looking at their flag, you know, and they had all these examples of flags. And so I'm curious because, you know, if you Google Cheyenne on Wikipedia, you know, our nickname of Cheyenne has always been like the Magic City of the Plains. You know, I was kind of like that. You know, I like the Magic City better, but Magic City of the Plains is there. But does Cheyenne have a brand? B, what do you think from your perspectives is the brand perception from the outside looking into Cheyenne? And then also, how do you think people feel about Cheyenne that live here? It's about the brand, the soul, the culture of Cheyenne.
We gosh darn have a brand. So, I mean, I think a lot of it comes down to how we see ourselves, and we do lean into it. I mean, we have to say, you know, Western heritage is a big focus. That is one of our pillars. We have 4 of them. We don't leave the other side of Cheyenne by the wayside either, though. Again, we focus in on the creative economy. It's live music, it's the arts, it's all of those things are still a big piece of what we have. You know, we talk about our entrepreneurship. It's our, you know, creatives and makers and all that stuff. It's our distillers. It's our, you know, craft beer, all the different things, and then even unique restaurant and retail. So, but our brand across, I mean, that's what I said, our PR and marketing firm, we push that idea of the Western heritage, and it's international. I mean, obviously, we did a trade mission in Paris a few years back. Disneyland Paris actually has a hotel themed on Cheyenne. Specifically, it's Western themed, and they just celebrated their 30th year. But it's one of those things that, you know, the world knows us from that aspect. So we fill in the gaps where we can. We stay on brand, stay on message. We don't forget all the other important things that make us a destination, but most definitely have a brand. And I think that filters into workforce. We do a lot of stuff in partnership on the Cowboy Channel. We do a lot of our stuff in news articles, as I mentioned earlier, but we're written in everything you can think of. I mean, again, Forbes, Travel Leisure, even NASCAR. So, I mean, just interesting things that highlight us, you know, New York Times. So our brand is out in the ether big time as a destination where you have an authentic Western heritage experience. Now, from the resident side, that is both there and not. So sometimes it's a hit and miss where, again, some folks say, well, what about me? And that's why we really try to make sure we focus on more than just one pillar. Again, it goes back to our trailblazer stories. There's so many stories that even though the Western heritage may be in their mix, you know, doesn't define everything that they do. And we make sure we tell their story as well. So no one's left behind, but we do focus heavily on that Western heritage experience.
I think just one more note for me on that too, just from how, you know, Visit Cheyenne is kind of moving forward with their marketing. I definitely do not work at the marketing agency that works with Visit Cheyenne, so don't know anything about these things. I do. And so how we're thinking about that too for Visit Cheyenne in particular is, like Dom said, that Western piece is our foot in the door for folks that are kind of outside of Drive Market and in that educational piece. And I think it's been really important over the last couple of years to then use that foot in the door to then start educating them about all of the other things. So the Cheyenne chic, the outdoors, all the cultural pieces. And so I think that's been really fun to be able to latch on to the thing that we are known for and then surprise and delight with all of the other things. And so I think, going forward, to me, that conversation is just going to continue to open, because it's not then that we're just going to be known for Western. It's going to be, we're going to be known for Western and, and so I think there's room to grow for sure, but movement, considerably forward in the last couple of years with some of the educational stuff on that. So.
Nashville of the West.
Yeah.
There's the brand. Yeah. So I've got two final questions before we'll open it up to Q&A from the council. So the first question is two parts. As always, I give you all these really complex questions, making sure your memory is like really on it. So where do you personally want to see Cheyenne 10 years from now? And what do you think is our community's biggest hurdle to getting there in 10 years? If you had a magic wand, what would you make Cheyenne 10 years from now?
I don't know if I have any super specifics around that, but what I have loved talking to people about, I don't work at my gallery all of that often, but when I do, most specifically during the summer, it was really interesting to hear folks potentially from that Drive Market range, from the Front Range, Northern Colorado, et cetera, to come and be like, we haven't been to Cheyenne in a couple of years, and man, it has changed. And that was cool. It was, multitudes of comments like that I heard, which was really important. But the notion there for me is that I want to see a Cheyenne that has room to change and pivot while still keeping roots and still keeping kind of that thing that we are known for. And so in my mind, it's how do we find room to be progressive and modernize and kind of move into this new arena while still really keeping those touch points and the nostalgia and the, kind of respect of the past and why people do come here and to our little Wild West. And so hopefully being able to really find a nice hybrid of those things would be important for me.
That's such a complicated question. The very quick, easy answer is a community where my kids want to live and they want to raise their families, so they're close to where we are, where they feel like they're safe, where they feel like there's amenities, which goes back maybe more to Dominic's side of things than mine. But to get there, we have to have the right kinds of industry, which is why one of our big target markets are multi-generational family-owned companies where they have the same types of values as we do in Wyoming, and providing the kind of jobs for people that live here so that people can make a good living wage and feel like they can find their way up and have the amenities here so they don't have to go to Colorado. So just a really vibrant community where you can go downtown and you can sit out on the patio and you can have lunch and you can visit with friends, all those people in Wyoming. So just trying to figure out how to 10, 20 years from now, have the correct kind of industry that plays into the kind of community that we are now and that we hopefully will be in the future.
Ditto. I think the ladies covered it. It's one of those things about smart growth. In my previous career, I was in the building the Wyoming we want. I was part of NDOW. And it's one of those things that I think there's room for growth. It just has to be smart growth for our community. You want to still retain who we are at our core, but there's room for growth in so many aspects, because without growth, there's a lot of the amenities you just can't provide because the infrastructure doesn't support it. So without thinking about that, I think that's key. But a lot of it can be leaned into, innovation and technology. And I think, Mr. Chairman, you've brought that before in the mix. And I think that's something that will always be at the forefront. So as long as we are thoughtful in that space, I think we'll do really well.
Great. Thank you for all of your thoughts. So to kind of wrap up, so, obviously, Bria, you're on the council. So, we work very closely with the Department of Workforce Services. We oversee, I think there's 40-ish programs, right, that help people upskill, train, get back into the workforce. So maybe from your perspective, since we have everyone here, we've got the Department of Workforce Services, we have the Wyoming Workforce Development Council. We're always looking to help many communities around Wyoming and trying to train and upskill and get the workforces ready for how that community wants to grow. From each of you, what could maybe we could do better at, or what would you like us to be able to do to help better support your initiatives?
So in a state that lacks really kind of incentives that a lot of other states have, and that's not surprising, we can't provide money back to companies when we don't collect that money. So I really lean into the programs provided by Workforce Services. It is something that I mentioned not only in the retention side of things to make sure that our current employers know what's out there and that there are support services, whether it's through entrepreneurship, through apprenticeships, or through training grants. It's something I use very regularly, and probably one of the top 3 to 5 things I mention to every single prospect are what are available. And so the only thing I can say, the more simple you make it, the more obvious, because a lot of times I provide them with a link to the website, and it really is just a clear cut, like, here are all the details. The clearer you can make it, say on your website, or information that's available that I can send, that makes it clear what the opportunities are and what the hurdles are, because it's easy to say, oh, there's these great apprenticeship programs. But if it is not in black and white, and here are the 5 things, they kind of feel like it's almost, I don't want to say a scam, but oh, it's there, but it's really not easy. And it's going to take me more work to, access these programs. So for me, in my standpoint, and this comes a lot up with the Wyoming Business Council, there's a lot of programs, but if you make it difficult to understand or you make it difficult to access, people are never going to use it, and it's no longer something that really feels available. So for me, I'm constantly going in and trying to read and trying to understand, because I'm the one who has to explain it. So please, that would be the biggest thing. And the more programs you have, and having them in a very clear format, is super, super important to what we do.
Yeah, those are all great points. And, I think I've mentioned the council before, the apprenticeship, internship grants, the pre-hire, obligation grants. So some of these are very unique to Wyoming. And so there, again, multiple states have come up to me and go, how did you stand up that program? How did you get funding for it? How is it funded? So it is really a unique advantage. And I think you make a great point, Rochelle, which is, you're the one interpreting all of the behind the scenes work that we do. But you've got to sell and market it and go, this is why. And then the employer should be able to go. And so, oh, this is really cool. Awesome.
I want to add one more thing. Something you said made me think. A lot of companies at this point, by the time they get to us and are interested in Cheyenne, they've already done all their research, whether it's a site selector or a company themselves. They've been out and they've looked at what workforce looks like. They've looked at what incentives are available. So there's a pretty good chance that by the time they get to me, they've already looked at your website. And if it is not abundantly clear, they move on, because they're usually considering 30 to 40 communities at any given time. So they're looking for any reason to disqualify our communities in our state. So it needs to be very abundantly clear of what's available at very first glance.
Mine is probably more of just a quick comment. Because I very much understand that the creative economy is not the one where you do have workforce, knocking down the doors to find jobs. But it is also interesting because we are out there. And I was teaching a few classes at LCCC over the last couple of years, and it was so interesting to me. Typically at the end of our, final graphic design class, a handful of my students would come up to me and be like, okay, Bria, what's next? How do I do this as a job? And so I think that there's a lot of space to fill there in terms of working, because it's not to say we don't have a corporate creative economy in Wyoming. We do. We have a handful of companies that are hiring and are supporting in, that graphic design, copywriting, videography, et cetera. And it is making sure that young folks know about them and know how to make those connections and know how to get in the door with them, I think is really, really important, because they do. There is such thing as an artist who is not starving. And I think that a lot of, college students and students of that age are not necessarily aware of that. I wasn't. I'm a little bulldoggish, so I figured it out myself. But it is, really nice to have support around you, particularly if that's not coming from your family, and what that looks like. So I do think there's a big opportunity there.
So I think mine's a little bit of a broken record. First off, I think you folks do an amazing job. Again, I've worked in Nevada, I've worked in Colorado, and a lot of the programs that I've seen through the years that staff put on and what the council does is fantastic, especially during the pandemic in the hospitality space. It was great to partner with you folks on a lot of things we were doing, even locally, for the hospitality and tourism industry. Outside of that, my broken record piece is, I think just state agencies or government agencies or anything in general, it goes back to that marketing piece. Is I think now in this space that I'm in, I realize you can actually tie metrics to stuff. I know in your space, it's kind of hard from a personal level sharing personal information, but I have found that like all of the stuff we do, like the video, I'm not sure where you guys are going to show that video or if you have a marketing firm that's doing it for you, but we actually can tie metrics to it. So if I could challenge you guys to do anything, is tie metrics. Because for us anymore, like it isn't even click through. Like, I don't know if it matters that someone clicks onto the website. We do conversions. Like, we were able to track people that they see our ad, they click on the ad, and they actually come here and visit and they spend money. And I can even track the money they spend. So ultimately, I know how much our promotion and marketing is converting tourists to come to our community. So I think the same is in levels like this. We want to inform people about our services, what Workforce Services provides. And on that matter, like going back to recruitment and retention, how are we recruiting people into the workforce? How do they know that, a construction job pays so well and there's so many of them? How do you get into the tourism trade and realize you can be a housekeeper one day and the general manager by the year's end? I mean, some of that stuff is critical, but if we're not putting it in the right space and it's not actually converting people, are our marketing dollars actually being utilized? So I would just challenge you to think about how the marketing dollars are spent. But that's about it.
Yeah, I would totally agree. I think that's something that I've had a few different conversations with council members about this, but it's about creating the definition of done and like how do we define success? The success that, is it 100 people that we keep in Wyoming? Is it 1,000 people? And, there's a quote out there that goes something like, a goal without a plan or a timeline or like having these, achievables there, it's just a dream. It's going to be one of those things that you just talk about, you've got to have, what are you trying to do? Here's how you define, like, this is great, good, not good. And then you've got to put a timeline around it. When do we want to see these results? So yeah, accountability is really, really important. So great input. So now we've got about 10 minutes. I would love to open it up to the council. If you have questions for either of our panelists today. Questions? Oh, yes, Lauren.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you all for talking about this morning. It's great. I think the one thing that floats to the top of my mind, and I work with economic development for the governor, is how do we balance the Wyoming mindset around minimalist and then the data centers, the changes in economy and energy and the advertising and recruitment? We keep hearing, and I know it's a fine balance, but we keep hearing, we don't want more people in Wyoming. We don't want data centers in Wyoming. I mean, just the comments back on when Meta broke ground on Facebook were like, come on, guys. So how do we start to tell that story, and how are you guys handling that now?
I think it goes back to the education side of things. I think making people understand. After I talked to that church group last night, I had several people come up and go, okay, you won me over. Because I think they don't understand that there's a cost to having a community. There's a cost to schools. There's a cost to roads. There's a cost to not having those potholes. Well, somebody's going to pay for the potholes. Would you rather it be Meta, who's going to put $1 million into the city of Cheyenne annually just in their property taxes? Or would you rather pick up that $1 million in infrastructure work? So I think it's really making them understand that if they want to keep a no income tax, if they want to keep that quality of life, somebody has to pay for it. And so I think you have to really understand not only what the community wants, but you also have to really understand what the community needs and be thoughtful about that. These are clean companies. We can have industry that's dirty. We can have industry that's clean. We can have industry that has a big impact on our communities. So I think that's for me where I draw the line, is what kind of companies we're really working with to make sure that they have the least impact with the biggest return, which of course is a data center. We hear tons of feedback, and a lot of it was on social media and on Facebook with the Meta announcement. There was a lot of strife about the amount of water they use. And we're like, well, actually, the Meta doesn't use any more water than bathrooms. They have a closed system, so they're not going to be using your water. Well, the city shouldn't be paying for all those roads and all that infrastructure. It's not fair that our taxpayer money pays for that. Well, did you know that Microsoft and Meta pay every bit of their infrastructure? They pay for the substations, they put in the roads, they put in the water, the sewer. And guess what? You're all going to benefit for that. They're also going to pay user fees to the Board of Public Utilities. And that money is going to help upgrade the system that you're not going to have to pay for in 10 years when upgrades are needed. So you just have to kind of make sure that people understand how they benefit and make sure you're making good, thoughtful choices. I will throw this out here kind of outside your question, but we do what's called site stats. So every single company that comes to us and looks to move to our community, we ask about how many jobs. By the way, we don't necessarily want big employers in Cheyenne, because if we bring in an employer that needs 500 employees, it sounds good because we all want more jobs. But guess what? That's going to pull employees from MSI. That's going to pull employers from Magpul. So small employers are definitely a much better fit for our community. So we just make sure those things are there. And I totally got off track, but yes, that's the point.
Can I follow up on that? So that was a leading question. And thank you. I guess my point is that it's all of our responsibility to have those conversations. And when we're hearing folks in our communities that are grouchy about something or another, it's probably because they don't understand. And they don't understand that the community will potentially benefit from the work that's being done and that there's a lot of behind the scenes things. So that's why I said that. That's why I wanted to pull that out. Thank you.
And I think I would only add to that is make sure the message comes back to how it benefits them in some way, as was mentioned. Like even us, we don't like visitors coming to our community. It's too crazy during Cheyenne Frontier Days, but ultimately almost 10 to 15% of actual taxes that come into the community are from visitors that literally save families in Laramie County almost $1,000 a year. So that goes into firefighters and roads and all the things. And same thing for businesses. At the end of the day, smart growth actually benefits you in your lifestyle as long as it's done in a way that's thoughtful, as Rochelle mentioned. I think as long as that comes full circle, this actually helps you and your family, makes your life better, then it starts to resonate.
And I just remember where I was going with that real quick. So I'm going to circle back real quick, if you don't mind. So we do this thing called site stats. So we find out how much they're going to pay, how many employees they're going to have, what their capital investment's going to be. We kind of figure out what that's going to look like at the state level, the county level, the city level. And then we have this great formulas program that we purchased years ago, and it inputs all the costs, because when a family moves or they follow a job, there's a cost to that. We're going to be educating to children for each of those employees. We kind of look at those things. So we have this great program that tells us if a company is a net benefit at every level or a deficit. And so again, going back to being thoughtful about who we recruit and what kind of companies we look to, we use that every single time to make sure it's a good fit for Wyoming, not just in the grit of the kind of company it is, but really fiscally, whether it's a responsible choice.
Great stuff. Yeah, if I had like, what would I like Cheyenne, or maybe even this applies to Wyoming 10 years from now, I wish we were nicer. Like how you were mentioning how like on the Meta thing, you see all this kind of pushback because they don't understand. And I'm sure all of you in your communities have like a Facebook, like, connections, and I'll see a post like, "Hi, we're moving from Colorado. Where should I live?" And I'm like, oh no, you should not have posted that, right? And we don't do a really great job of saying, awesome, we're excited. What? There's a lot of pushback like, oh, we're closed for business. We don't want you here. Go back to California, go back to Colorado. I just wish we were more inviting.
I have an interesting comment about that, I guess. My first comment is, have you been to the East Coast? We are mean out there. I feel like Wyoming people are super nice. But to me, that's interesting in that, especially being a little bit of a, I guess, long-term transplant at this point. Yes, agree with you 100% in the digital space. The interesting thing is I feel like Wyoming is one of the most hospitable places in everyday people interaction that I have ever been. And so how do we encourage that into those conversations? Because I truly do think that we have it. It is in our hearts. We want, to have just these amazing communities. And how do we foster that across all platforms?
Yeah, you're right.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
Quick question.
Sure. Right.
We've heard a lot about data centers and that type of thing this morning. We have not heard much about GBSD and the impact that's having on our community. Is there any type of recruitment strategy and type of thing to keep those folks here? There's probably $250 million worth of work on base right now, and 90% of those tradesmen coming from out of town to do that work. Is that working into the plan at all? And are we targeting trying to attract those folks to stay?
So I'm going to speak a little bit out of our space. So our chamber really is the one that's working with GBSD. I think we were all really worried, and this isn't exactly answering your question, but I think we were all really worried when they started talking about there would be 10,000 workers that were going to be needed for this update. And we're like, oh my goodness, where are we going to put them? It's going to tax our housing. It's going to tax our workforce. Most of those workers are now going to be in Nebraska, which kind of makes sense because the silo updates are really in, Northeast Colorado, Nebraska, and Eastern Wyoming. The statistics, according to the Chamber and LCCC's housing study that came out either earlier this year or last year, really said that we're going to see probably about 1,000 households here in Cheyenne. I think this happens all the time. I don't think we have to worry about maybe a strategy to keep them here. When you talk to so many people here in Cheyenne, they'll say, oh, I retired from the military and I stayed. I think there's going to be a certain amount of people that move here. Their kids start school here. They realize the great programs at the University of Wyoming. I think they're going to stay naturally. At least that's what I would assume just based on past experience. Far as recruitment, I think that's happening at a different level than maybe us. We're kind of ancillary to what's happening. Northrop Grumman is really handling that from their standpoint. But yeah, this is not really something we've worked on directly. It's been a chamber kind of project.
And I guess the only thing I'll add into it is working through the chamber. Dale's been pushing our newsletter out that has all the events and stuff, so they know that they'll be welcome to come and hopefully enjoy everything from our Helen Woods Rodeo series to any of the major events we have going on. So we're just trying to incorporate them as part of our community while they're here for a little while, just so they know there's fun things to do and enjoy what we have to offer. So ours is more, I guess, also ancillary, but just definitely making them feel welcome while they're here. So.
Great. Well, thank you all so very much for your time. Great insights, and I definitely want to make sure that we continue great collaboration and great partnerships there. So let's give a round of applause to our Cheyenne Local Economic Development Panel. Okay, so moving right along to our next agenda item, we are going to review one-stop operations and performance report. And this is an opportunity, again, this was available to you on onboard to kind of get the high-level quarterly report read. And we have Christina, West, and Trevor available for any questions you might have. So what I'll do is I'll give you 2 minutes if you want to kind of review that, and then I'll open it up for questions either for Trevor or Christina. So we'll start questions at 9:42. All right, it is 9:42, so I will go ahead and open it up for questions from the council to either Trevor or Christina.
Mr. Chairman, I'll lead out with this question. What is the driver behind the significant numbers for Rock Springs?
Mr. Chairman and council members, that's a really good question. Really, we're seeing a lot of things. I mean, we've had continued conversation about all the growth and all the industry growth that's happening there. We're seeing high numbers of poverty there as well, people that are meeting the eligibility requirements for our programs. It also is our connection to the community. We are working really hard to build relationships and partnerships in that area. One specific area that we've put a lot of focus on is our adult ed partnership. We're seeing a lot of co-enrollments with those individuals that are basic skills deficient and English language learners. So I think it's a combination. It's the community in need. There's a lot of growth there. And then it's also the work we're doing to build those relationships and tell people what we do. A lot of times when we talk to communities, they're unaware of the services we provide. So once we get out there, we are continuing to see higher numbers. Does that help, Ron?
Certainly.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes. Thank you.
I think this is to Christina and Trevor. So reading this, would it be an accurate assumption to make that the majority of the clients served in the workforce centers are actually not served through Title I, but mostly through Title III and all the other programs that are administered through workforce programs? Or is it that the Title I numbers maybe are not as reflective due to challenges with the current CMS? Maybe that's a loaded question. I'm sorry, but being a title partner, we look at the same kind of numbers. So some of these numbers just kind of, I'm like, that can't be. I know they're serving people. I know we're referring people and I know people are being served. So I'm just a curiosity question and a clarification maybe. Thank you.
Yeah, I'll start. I'll let you chime in too, Christina, on this with your thoughts. But I think we have a lot of people that come in that are served under Wagner-Peiser, which is just basic career services, helping with resumes, things like that. So that's a lot of the numbers that come in. I think that data for the walk-in numbers also includes people that may be coming for help with UI, like ID.me, things like that. Or, in offices where it's not just the workforce center, there may be some other people that are coming to the desk that are getting captured in there as well, that are getting referred to other DWS services. So I think, I don't know, do you want to add anything on there, Christina?
Mr. Chairman and committee members, I would like to add just a little bit, and I hope that this might answer some questions from yesterday as well. So currently we have a total of 116 staff and we have 18 workforce centers across the state. We are trying to offer virtual services as well as in-person services. However, we're finding that most citizens really like the in-person services. So even though we're trying other modalities, it seems like they come back to those in-person services. Within those workforce centers, we do operate 18 programs. WIOA Title I is one of the 18. And so when somebody asks, how many individuals actually work directly with WIOA, that's a really hard question to answer. We can get it for you, but it's really based on hours. So for example, in 2 of our workforce centers, it's a one-man office. So that person has to know all 18 programs. They don't just work with Title I. They work with Title III, Wagner-Peiser. They work with RICEA. They work with all the programs. So it's really hard to say it's just a WIOA case manager. Even in the Cheyenne Workforce Center where it's larger and we have 4 case managers that are designated to WIOA, that's not all they do. They're required to cover the front desk. They're required to provide Wagner-Peiser services. And that's how they get those referrals to WIOA. As they come in, that individual needs help with a resume. We realize that they are basic skills deficient. Maybe they need some upskilling. Maybe they're a dislocated worker. They just were laid off or terminated for some reason. And through those conversations, we then can help them with WIOA services. So it's really hard to just say this person only does this, because everything kind of feeds into, into various programs. As Nikki mentioned, our MIS system, we're in a state of flux, but there's a lot of light at the end of the tunnel. I think that by December, we should have a fully operating system. Our previous system went down in December of 2023. And so this year has been a challenge. We really focused on making sure the labor exchange, the job seekers, and the employers had a system. But that meant that the case managers did not have a system. So we've had to use paper to determine eligibility for a minute. We've had to use paper to track services. We've had to use paper to track funding. And I know that makes fiscal just, squirm back there. So our numbers, and I believe it's important to be transparent, our numbers will be lower this year than they've been in years past. It's really been difficult for case managers, but they remain very positive, very optimistic, and we do really like our new system, but it's just taken a minute. So I do think that there is some of that in there, Nikki. Those numbers were pulled from spreadsheets. And I do know, in fact, that our numbers will be lower than they have been in the past due to that.
And just to add on to on the MIS system, we are really turning a corner with the project here, and focus is shifting to make sure that the system will operate in an efficient way. So case managers, fiscal, everybody that's utilizing the system for their work will be able to do their work in a better way moving forward. So, that speed bump, I guess, as a way to describe it, will start to be lowered as we keep moving forward.
Mr. Chairman, I just want to applaud this team, having gone through a CMS change ourselves in the vocational rehabilitation program. It is challenging. It's a beast. And it throws challenges for the field staff, for participants. And I know this team has been working really, really hard. So kudos to you guys for hanging in there and making things work. Good job.
Yes, I will echo that. We also went through a very large, what's called a core conversion, but we're also considering as a CMS change at Blue, and it's like, ooh, it's a huge undertaking, and there's so many unexpected delays and technical issues and vendor relationships. So yes, I do applaud you. It's a great move, and I see what you're saying. Like 2025 is gonna be a lot better. This year was just a little rough. So, but you made the right move, and just congratulations as well. Yep. All right. Well, thank you, Christina and Trevor. Oh, is there a question answer? Who has a question? Oh, Lauren?
So do you want me to go, or do you want to do that one first? Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think for us, as we approach legislative session, we are hearing from especially the newly elected legislators that may not understand the system as well, because they haven't been involved in the work that you guys are doing, that they're wanting to reduce the state budget by 30%. That means there's going to be scrutiny all the way around. And I can imagine if they're requesting those numbers, that there might be questions around, why are we funding these programs? Why are we putting extra money? Why are there staff in all of these locations? How do we reduce that? So I just was hoping that you could share, what we can effectively share. They could potentially be reaching out to this board, but what we can potentially share with them to help give them the correct information so that they can make educated decisions around that.
That's a great question. And may take some more thought too between this and future meetings. But I think as a group, we've been looking at ways that we can save money and we can do things better. I think through the MIS system, the ongoing maintenance cost of that brought significant savings to the agency. I think I may be going off track a little bit with your question, but do you want to add?
Mr. Chairman and committee members, that is a really good question. And I will say that that's something we do no matter what season we're in. So we're always really good stewards of the money that we receive. Currently, we do have some openings, and we look at them really closely to say, where's the need? Do we need this? And is this something that we can be flexible and make changes to our service delivery? So that's something we're always doing and will continue to do. I do believe that knowledge is really important. And as I mentioned earlier, a lot of times people don't know what we do. And so I would love to provide some information just to get us started on all the different programs that we provide, what they are and how they help individuals. We've noticed that we just started a program, I believe it's a couple years ago now, called RCIA, and it's really focused on helping those that are unemployed gain employment quickly. And so basically we're working directly with our UI partner, and we are meeting with UI claimants up to 40 a week to help them return to work quickly. And I don't have the data in front of me, but we are seeing great gains. So we're seeing that people are on unemployment for shorter periods of time, which I think that's a win. And so I would love to share that information, however we can provide that, just to provide knowledge to them on how our services are impacting the community.
Awesome. Thank you. And we do have one question that was actually submitted as pre-work, which is how many WIOA funded individuals are placed in gainful employment at the completion of their training?
Yeah, and this was actually a two-part question. I broke it into two parts just to help make it easy to display up here. But the first part of this is the gainful employment. So this information is taken from our annual report from last year. We're currently working on the current year's annual report. So these numbers will get updated. But in PY22, for that report, it had that number of people served. In the different programs, you can see the employment rate, which is 2 quarters after exit, and then the median earnings for that same quarter. It's just some notes on the populations in these different groups. The youth, I believe 2/3 of the individuals on this report were in the 16 to 18-year-old age range. For the adult, it was largely 25 to 44, and dislocated worker was a little further up on the age scale in general. Wagner-Peiser is kind of covers across the board, all ages. So yeah, so I can pause here if there's any follow-up questions on this piece before we go to the next.
Yeah, Phil.
Is that median earnings, can you explain that? Like $9,360 in 3 months, or how does that?
Yeah. So the wage data that we get comes from the UI system and UI wages across the country. And so it collects all the adult participants that have wages in this reporting quarter. And then creates that median earnings, so that's that middle mark. So I believe half the wages are above that, half are below that.
Okay. So they're fairly low, you could say.
Yeah, well, I think that's the difference you see with the age groups too. Youth, like I said, like 2/3 of them are 16 to 18. And so they're at the very, very beginning of their careers, and you would expect those wages to go up over their first few years. And dislocated workers, they're generally an older population, and so they're making better wages when they come to us. And those dislocated workers are going to be people like the layoffs that were discussed yesterday. Those people that get laid off that aren't likely to return to the same type of work and need retrained to do a different career. And so that in my mind, that helps to explain it. I hope that helps a little bit.
Yes, sir. Yep. Thank you.
Tina, did you have something?
I do. Thank you, Mr. Chair. In addition to Rock Springs and those numbers really going up between the two reports, Riverton also had a pretty good little spike. So are we doing any additional outreach? Because when you look at Riverton and Lander that are 30 miles apart, and your numbers between those two communities equal what Gillette's numbers look like, clearly we have some folks that need some help in Fremont County.
Mr. Chairman and committee members, we agree with you. So definitely, again, I think with these numbers, I hate to say it, but I'm not 100% sure they're completely accurate because of how we're collecting the data right now. So we're super excited to have those reports. And I will just kudos to Trevor. He tried to get some data so that we could compare my information compared to, the system. We just couldn't get at them in time. So we're working on that. Riverton is definitely an area that we need to put heavy focus on. We see a lot of walk-in traffic in Riverton. A lot of the walk-in traffic is due to some of the needs with, just the location, the tribes and what's required for individuals receiving services there. And so they come in to show that they're registered. They come in to show that they're working on Wagner Pizer services, that they're looking for employment. And so we do see high volumes of traffic, walk-in traffic. Unfortunately, the piece that's sometimes missing with the population that comes in is when we bring them back to our desk to provide continued service, they're not really interested in those additional programs. And so we're really working hard to connect with the tribes and their WIOA partners to see if we can have some correlation or relationship there that we currently do not have. Mm-hmm.
All right.
All right, and then we have the other part of the question was of the participants eligible for WIOA funds, how much is the average amount of funds spent on individuals? And this slide here just shows, again, the same total served and broken out into training services. So everybody that's enrolled in these programs gets career services, which are resume help, that it may be other things as well. Training services are when they're enrolled in a training to get an industry recognized credential. Sorry, lost my train of thought there for a second. The cost on our report, the cost per participants is broken out into career services and training services. You can't simply add those numbers up because not everybody gets training services, so that would inflate that number. So I did the math to do the average cost per participant there in that final column, just to show what, with the combination of career and training services, what that looks like.
I just want to add, so career services would also include support services. So oftentimes people can come into the workforce center and say, hey, I already have a job offer, but I don't have the tools I need. And if I don't get these tools, they're not going to hire me, or I don't have the clothing, or I need CPR and first aid and I can't afford that. Quite frankly, I'm struggling to get to work and I don't have enough money for a bus token. So those would be things that would fall also under career services. That is a support service to help them either gain employment or retain employment.
All right. Thank you both very much. Always appreciate the updates. All right. Running a little bit behind, but we do
Mr.
have.
Chairman,
yes.
Before you move on, I just want to point out that I heard about this great foundation yesterday that can help with those bus tokens.
Oh yeah. Maybe it's called the Blue Foundation or Boost Center.
You might be right.
Okay. Yeah, I'm glad you're on it today, Ron. All right. Next up, we have Mary Orr, who is our center manager from the Laramie Rollins region for our one-stop center story.
Hello, can everybody hear me?
Yes. Hi, Mary.
Perfect. Hello. I apologize I'm not there in person with you guys today. I do apologize. All right, I'll try and get going. Mr. Chairman and committee members, there are over 100 DWS employees who work in 18 workforce centers across our state, serving the people of Wyoming and even our most rural communities. We serve individuals with significant barriers such as extreme poverty and homelessness, various disabilities, justice-involved individuals, veterans, youth who have experienced great hardship in their short lives. And we take the time to coach them through their significant barriers in order to help them reach their employment and training goals, all while collaborating with our many mandated partners and assisting employers of our state. I strongly encourage all of you to spend some time in one of your one-stop centers in your area with one of your case managers. You'll be really amazed at the empathy and knowledge that they all possess. Knowledge that only comes from years of experience working with and helping these populations better themselves and their families. In many cases, we stop the cycle of generational poverty with these families that affects so many people in Wyoming. We truly help people change the whole trajectory of their lives and the lives of their children. So I am the very proud center manager of the Laramie and Rawlins Workforce Centers. I've been in that role for about 4 years now. And I really appreciate you providing me today the opportunity to speak with you and providing me some talking points so that I have good clarification on what you guys want to hear. First of all, I'm going to talk to you about a positive collaboration with a business or community entity. I thought the most obvious thing to talk about would be our next generation sector partnership in Laramie, the High Altitude Manufacturing Partnership. I know you guys have a big interest in next gen partnerships, and you might not get to hear a lot about some of the exciting things that go on. But we have made some really great progress. Larry can probably speak to the last 4 years that I've been helping co-convene this partnership. We have been trying so hard to follow his model that happened in Cheyenne, where we were able to get hopefully counselors and teachers from the school district to tour manufacturers and really try and educate them on the jobs that are available to people right out of high school in our community. And I am really excited to say that after literally 4 years of working on trying to build those partnerships with the school district here in Albany County, this week on Tuesday, the 5th, the teachers and counselors of Laramie High School, Rock River High School, and Whiting High School were given the opportunity to tour 4 different manufacturers in Laramie for their professional development day. It was a really big effort to get that to happen. And in Laramie, it's, I think even more than some places, expected that a student will leave high school and just move straight into college. I think having the University of Wyoming here really makes people think that way. And so it was really important to get them in front of manufacturers who can show the amazing jobs that are available to youth right out of high school. So we had 13 teachers and counselors tour 4 manufacturers on Tuesday. I was there. They were really engaged. I heard a lot of whispering about, oh, wow, like I didn't know this was something that happened here. They were blown away by the wages that students can earn. And I really think it was kind of a groundbreaking thing for those teachers and counselors. And time will tell, but I'm really hoping that that starts fostering more work between these manufacturers in town and the schools to really get them in, speaking to youth, talking to them about the opportunities that are available for those that just aren't really heading toward college, who can make really good wages. There was one youth at a place called Ancient Elements Stoneworks here in town. They make and install countertops and all kinds of incredible things. They have a student right now who started as an intern through the Workforce Development Training Fund. And he is still in high school, but he is making almost $70,000 a year, helping manufacture counters. And the teachers were really blown away by that. So things like that, it was really exciting to finally get that to happen. And we hope to make it a more common thing to get more and more teachers in these businesses. So that was really exciting. The next thing I'm going to talk about is success stories for some of our WIOA participants. Asking me to pick one is really hard, I will say, because we really have so many. So I'm going to focus on 2 women today who have completed our WIOA program and have really changed their lives. First, I'm going to speak about a individual in Rollins. Her name is Mary Jane Ramsey. She's a single mother of 1. She moved to the US about 14 years ago from the Philippines and married her husband. Life was great, and then he passed away. And she had no work experience, nothing. She lacked confidence. There was a lot of cultural barriers, and she just found herself alone with her son that she needed to provide for. So she came to us. She needed to find employment quickly. She didn't really have time to do like a 2-year program. So we, after a lot of coaching with her, figured out she's just great with people. So she went into training to become a CNA. It was not easy for her. I think she needed a lot of case management and assistance and coaching. Jessica Holcomb out of Rollins, one of my awesome case managers there, worked really closely with her to help build her confidence and help her kind of understand what she needed to do in order to make this a reality for her. She completed her CNA successfully. It was not easy, but she got it done. And now she has been working since May of 2024 full-time in Rollins, providing for herself and her family. Finally starting to feel like a part of that community, and it's been really amazing to see that. The next success story I will talk about is a young lady out of Laramie. I only got a picture recently, so sorry, Jennifer, I didn't get it to you in time. Here she is, if you can hopefully see that. This is Mackenzie Oliver. She came to us at the age of 16 back in 2022. And I will just say with youth, especially when we start working with the youth, it's a really long-term relationship that we're building with these youth. It's not, they come in, they do what they need to do and they're gone. It's years worth of work with these individuals. So Mackenzie came in at the age of 16 in 2022. I think like a lot of youth, she was really affected by COVID. She was incredibly bright, but school just was not right for her. The format of it just didn't work. So she dropped out in 10th grade and she came to us needing to get her high school equivalency. We have a really great partnership with LCCC over here at the Laramie campus with Jessica Ford and her crew. And we have what we call the RISE program for youth here. She was enrolled in that program and she really did the work. She showed up to class, she learned what she needed to learn, and she got her high set really quickly. It was very impressive. She came in, like a lot of young women do, with the goal of going to cosmetology school. We see it a lot, I think, across the state. All the young men come in and they want to either be welders or mechanics, and the young women want to go into cosmetology. And often they don't have a full understanding of what that career really means, how hard it is. As a cosmetologist, you're working very hard to keep people happy and keep a clientele that you can support yourself. But Mackenzie was really like, that was what she wanted to do. So Misty Langwell here in Laramie, another great case manager, worked with her really extensively, and we decided it did make sense for her to move forward after she got her high set. So Mackenzie packed up and moved to Cheyenne to go to Cheeks Academy. She was truly a model student. She worked very hard, and she just graduated October 29th. And she got her own seat at Infinite Ways Salon in Cheyenne. Look how happy she is. We're really proud of her. She's just one of the many youth who come out of a lot of hardship and really make something of themselves. And it's really fun to see youth create these goals and be able to help them achieve those goals. So those are two success stories. Finally, I will talk a little bit about the challenges that we face. There's a lot of challenges, but I think what I would like to focus on is talking to you about our challenges around youth. There's kind of two I'll bring up. First of all, keeping youth engaged can be really difficult. They have a lot of challenges in their lives. They have a lot going on in their families. Friends, all of those things. And so it's hard sometimes to keep a youth really engaged in the goal of getting their high school equivalency. In Rollins, for example, a lot of individuals can drop out of school, get a good job, say in the oil field, and make good money without a high school equivalency. So explaining to those youth why it would be good to have that is actually pretty challenging when they can go and make really good money without that. So working with them to really understand that as they move forward in life, employers are expecting at the very least a high school diploma or equivalency, and that that's something they need to achieve now. As you get older and further out, some of the older individuals we work with who need a high school equivalency, it is a lot harder to get that later in life, the further out you are from school. So we really do work with those youth to try and keep them engaged. We provide incentives to them, all kinds of things that we can do to try and keep them engaged, but it is difficult. I will say along those lines with youth, one of the pieces of WIOA is we like to provide a work experience for youth. That means trying to figure out a career pathway that they're interested in and actually getting them in with an employer, hopefully for a paid experience. Getting employers that are willing to take that on can be challenging. So, something that might be very helpful that I think maybe the council could even consider is how do we engage employers more in understanding the importance of giving these young people the option to come in and learn about a career that they could hopefully one day actually work there full time. We've seen it happen, but it is nice to have a good list of different types of industries that we can place people. Along those lines, in Laramie, we've been working with LCCC on a kind of new pilot program. So while the youth are going through the high set program, we've been doing a Friday every month employer workshop where we bring in employers from different industries to talk to the youth about what they do and what it's like to work there. The goal is here in December, we've been doing it for a few months now with different employers. We'll have about 6 employers that they've all talked to from different industries. And then in December, we're going to have the youth pick at least one of those employers that they're most interested in. We're going to bring the employers back, and they're actually going to do interviews with those youth with the hope of placing each of them in a work experience. It's really easy once they get their high set for them to kind of think they're done and disappear. So we're hoping to catch that while they're still working toward their high set so that we can get them in hopefully with a great employer, learn about a job they're interested in, and then maybe even get them full-time employed. So that's how we're kind of working on combating that challenge, but I would love to hear your guys' thoughts. That's pretty much what I have to say.
Awesome work. Thank you so much for those updates, Mary. Yeah, this is always one of my favorite parts of the council meetings is hearing our participant stories and how the decisions we make around this table and all the hard work that the Department of DWS does, how we actually truly impact people around the state. So any quick comments or questions for Mary? All right. Well, thank you so much, Mary, for joining us today. Appreciate
Thank
it.
you.
Keep up all, and I also like the example of working with Larry. And after 4 years, sounds like you've got some exciting things that just happened. So keep it up.
Thank you so much. Yeah, it's great.
All right. Thanks, Mary.
Thanks.
All right. So we are going to change the agenda a little bit. At 10:35, we have our speaker from LCCC that will be presenting to us. And I want to honor their time since they're taking time out from their work that we do that on time. So we're going to go ahead and take a break now. And then we're going to reconvene here just before 10:35. So I guess that's like a 13-ish minute break. I'm just going to put on your radar. I'll be starting the gaveling at around 10:30, 10:31. And then we're going to have Michael Moore present in-demand occupations list after we hear from LCCC. So enjoy your break, and I'll see you here in about 13, 14-ish minutes. All right, 1 minute warning, council. Go ahead and start wrapping up your conversations and we'll begin shortly. All right, gavel time. If I can call the council back to order so we can go to our agenda and hear from our next speaker. Which this is another segment of our agenda that I'm also really excited about. And we're obviously incredibly excited to have Tanya from LCCC join us today and speak to us about the workforce and outreach programs. On Onboard, you have the presentation is already available to you, so you can follow along on your own personal computers with the slide deck. And we're just excited to have you. So I will go ahead and hand it off to Tanya. Welcome to the Wyoming Workforce Development Council.
Thank you so much. It's great to see so many familiar faces, and I'm excited to meet those of you I haven't had a chance to meet yet. So again, my name is Tanya Hacker. I am the Dean of Outreach and Workforce Development at Laramie County Community College, and I just stepped into that role at the end of May. So I've been there just a few short months. And before I was there, many of you probably knew Mary Ellen Tast, who was in that position prior to me stepping in, and she was there for 25 plus years. So she did amazing work. And so a lot of what I'll share with you today, I can't take credit for. She just has been amazing, an amazing asset to the college and the community. And really put her heart into the work. So, but I am excited to share a few new things that have, few new developments that have come up, and just a little bit about the outreach and workforce development function of the college. So we'll go ahead to the first slide. Just a quick overview of the programs that fall under my umbrella in outreach and workforce development. In general, if you think of anything that would be non-credit, continuing education, industry training, any sort of customized training, apprenticeship programs, those all currently fall under my umbrella. So I'll kind of go through a few just to give you some idea. The first bullet on my list is life enrichment. So we have a very robust life enrichment program at LCCC. And those are the classes that you can sign up to take as a community member for fun. So pickleball, painting, watercolor, those kinds of things, really meant to enrich our experience in our community and bring people together for things that are fun and different. So we have lots of opportunities for those. Under life enrichment, at LCCC, we have a program called SEEK, which is a youth program for our youth, Primarily, those programs run in the summer, and they are themed. So we have different opportunities for parents to sign their children up for crochet camp and robotics camps and STEM camps and all kinds of different opportunities. Those have been around for a really long time. One thing a lot of people don't know is, at least for LCCC, Life Enrichment has been here since LCCC opened the doors. So it's one of the oldest programs we have on campus that has been continuously available from the time we opened our doors in the late 1960s to current. So that's a piece that people don't think of as directly tied to workforce development, but we do offer under that umbrella. Business training and professional development is another piece. So those opportunities for current employees in businesses to engage in leadership training, conflict resolution training, other types of professional development types of trainings. We have a very extensive menu of opportunities there as well. So we have an entire team of staff and adjunct faculty who work just on serving the needs of our businesses, our public sector partners, our nonprofits, and training and supporting their staff and professional development needs. Industry training is a big piece of what we do. So just to give you a sample kind of what we have plumbing and HVAC apprenticeship programs, registered apprenticeship programs through LCCC. We offer manufacturing industry training and advanced manufacturing. So that's a relatively new program. We offer just a wide variety of training in that area, depending on what industry needs. We have CDL training. So we do that, all the different types of CDL licenses you can get, we do offer. We have, trying to think off the top of my head, the other ones. Anything that comes up. So for example, the Wyoming Department of Transportation approached us recently. This is just one of many examples, saying, we would like to partner with you to train some of our employees on air brake systems through your diesel tech program. So what we'll do is we'll run a customized class for them, utilizing our faculty or our instructors to teach the basics of the air brake systems and troubleshooting and things like that. So that's one example, but we do that for lots of different needs that may come up. And the great thing is that industry can come to us and say, this is a need that we have. And even if it's not something we currently offer, we have the flexibility on the non-credit side to stand something up really, really quickly. So sometimes within a matter of just a couple of weeks, if we can find an instructor and get things going, we can have everything ready to go to deliver that training for industry. So it's great. There are other opportunities that may take us a little bit longer to build up, but if there's a significant need, then we'll work really hard to address that need and make sure that's available. Another bullet there, we have the Concept Forge, which is a really high-tech makerspace and fabrication lab on our campus that came about the same time as our Advanced Manufacturing and Materials Center, which is brand new to our campus. So we're in, I think, year 2 of delivering programming there. Metal 3D printers, high-tech. We just bought a $37,000 wireless scanner, thanks to Michelle Aldrich and her group at Department of Education, and a grant that we applied for and were successful for there. So really, really cool opportunities for community members, students, faculty to come in and develop things, reverse engineering, develop prototypes, just make things. We offer the community a very reasonable membership fee, opportunity to join, to pay that fee, and then have access to all of that equipment and that high tech stuff in there. So that's pretty cool. And we're excited about that. We offer an entire suite of software skills training, which would include, Microsoft Excel, Microsoft Access, QuickBooks, anything you can think of, presentation software skills, those kinds of things on an as-needed basis and also on an open enrollment basis. So we offer classes on a regular basis that people can register and sign up for, or if a company reaches out to us and says, I have 4 staff that I need trained in advanced Microsoft Excel, then we can work with them to set up a training there as well. So that's another one. Also under the umbrella is our adult basic education, which is our GED student population. We have about room for about 70 students in each class on the Cheyenne campus, and in our Laramie campus, just over half that many. And it's always full. So that's certainly an area of need in our community and an area that we can continue to support. Part of that program is also English as a second language, which we're seeing an increase in a need for that as well. So we offer both of those programs through outreach and workforce development. And then the newest addition to sort of the services that we offer to our community is the Southeast Wyoming Innovation Center, which is a WIP-funded project. And I have an entire slide on that if we want to go to the next slide, Jen. So that we just hired the director for this innovation center. We're hoping to do a formal launch in January of next year, and which is coming right up. It's like 2 months away now, but so we're excited about this. This is really an opportunity for us to sort of support building the entrepreneurial ecosystem in Southeast Wyoming. So helping people who are aspiring entrepreneurs who are interested in accessing support or resources for startups, just may have questions for starting a business. There are plenty of resources that exist within the ecosystem, but we need to figure out a way to really kind of kickstart the number of businesses that are able to be successful and able to access those resources. So really what this will do is maybe fill in some gaps that we were in the process of identifying that may exist within the ecosystem. Anybody can walk through the door and with any idea, anything from starting up a food truck to the next high impact, high growth tech company. And we will work as sort of a concierge and triage those needs and get them connected with the right folks. If we can support them within the Innovation Center, we'll do that. I think that we're kind of starting to identify as a prototyping hub. There's a really great makerspace over in Laramie as well on the UW campus. And then we've got one here in Cheyenne. So Southeast Wyoming is really poised to support the prototyping needs of aspiring entrepreneurs and startups. So we're really excited about this. It's going to be open to anyone in the community. Kind of some strategies that we thought would be important in offering this resource would be to just be a really good partner to other entities that exist. So make sure that we're talking to folks, that we're partnering on different initiatives, that we understand what the resources are, the different initiatives that are happening already in this space. And then making sure that our services are community-based so that people don't have to come to campus to access them. So really going out into the community. I just had a conversation with Rachel Svoboda, who's at the Library and Business Services here in town about, utilizing space in the library to offer think tanks or offer workshops or, open office hours as we get this innovation center going, and then rotating to different locations throughout the community. Rural engagement will be really important. So making sure that we are serving our most rural communities within Southeast Wyoming. So I put in there an example would be our Eastern Laramie County communities, Carpenter, Pine Bluffs, Burns. And then again, the case management approach is really important, which is just making sure that that everyone who walks through the doors or contacts us for support is able to get connected to the support and resources they need. So that's basically it for that's kind of the newest thing that we are excited to offer the community and really looking forward to partnering on. So please, if there's any ideas you have or opportunities to jump in and partner, let us know. We would love that. Lindsay Stutheit is the director that we hired. So she just started 3.5 weeks ago. So she's brand new, but she's hit the ground running and she's really excited to get going. So next slide, please. Then the rest of my presentation really is answering the questions that were submitted by this group. So I will do that and then hopefully have a little bit of time to answer any other questions that may come up. First, before I jump into this, are there any questions about the first couple of slides I shared about the services that we do offer in outreach and workforce development or the Southeast Wyoming Innovation Center?
Yeah, thank you for the presentation. A quick question, is the Wyoming Innovation program that you guys are starting, is that kind of a rebranding of the small business development office there on campus?
No, no.
Okay.
So we'll continue to work in partnership with the Small Business Development Center. Yeah. So they still are located on campus. There are resources they could provide that we couldn't provide, and we'll just be working really closely with.
I was just curious because it sounded like an overlaying of services.
Yes.
So I was like, oh, are they rebranding?
Yeah,
Thank you.
no, it does. And I think that's been probably the biggest challenge, is figuring out how can we fill in gaps without duplicating things that already exist, right? So yeah. Any other questions?
Just a comment for you. So I just wanted to say thank you for both of those things. My kids go to Seek every year and they love it. And so that's just been such a nice, as a parent, a great opportunity for me to, give them different sorts of enrichment during the summer than we typically be able to see. So that's wonderful. So thank you for continuing that. And then I am, just as an entrepreneur in Cheyenne, very excited for the Innovation Center to kind of get going and see how that can push the conversation forward. So thank you.
Great. Amazing. Yeah, of course. And and we're always looking for feedback. So if there are camps that you wish we offered for your kids that we don't, please let us know. And we can certainly look into doing something like that. So thank you. All right, well, I'll jump into these questions. So I didn't get to every single question that was submitted. So if there's something that you're feeling like you're just left hanging, let me know and I can try to answer that. One thing I want to say before I answer these is that my scope is pretty broad, but there are still things that are a little bit outside of my scope that I may not be the expert on, but I can certainly put you in touch with someone else at LCCC or within the community college system in Wyoming who could potentially answer those questions, if that makes sense. So the services provided to help graduates with job placement, lots and lots of services are provided. So LCCC switched to a pathways model a few years ago, and that's going really, really well. Guided career development is just an integral part of that pathways model. So students coming in pursuing our credit programs, they get that from the very, very beginning and even prior to when they actually start on campus with us. So that is a part of something that's integrated in. But as far as, our non-credit training opportunities, like for example, CDL, if we've got somebody coming in for CDL wanting that training, it's a significant investment. It's a fairly significant time commitment. And we want to see them successful in finding jobs after. So we facilitate that process for them. We help them, tune up their interview skills, help them with resumes, all of those kinds of things. Essential skill development, soft skill development is also really vital and very important in that process as well. So, different things like what to wear to an interview, how to show up, how to be a good employee, those kinds of things, workplace communication. Those things are all integrated in with the curriculum in all of the training programs that we offer. We do interviews on campus, and we have very strong industry partnerships with folks who do come to campus and interview our students. So depending on the program, one example, and I provided just a handout as an example of something that we offer. There's this handout, and I have paper copies of this as well, that is an example of one of our manufacturing scholarship programs and how we support students through their journey through that program in career development, and also wraparound services for students who may have food insecurity or who may not have transportation to get to and from campus, those kinds of things. So you can certainly reference that, but prepping them for industry is a really, really big part of what we do in that program. And then we're so fortunate to partner with Department of Workforce Services on different grant opportunities, including pre-hire grants. And what I appreciate about those are that they are structured and that we need to partner with our employers from the very, very beginning and be identifying those employers who need to hire people, how many people they need to hire, what their projected employment needs are, and then working with them on the back end after we've trained the folks to come back to campus, interview the people who have successfully finished the program, and then potentially hire them if they're a good fit for that company. So that's a fantastic program. We love the pre-hire grant program and are so grateful for those grant dollars. Just to give you an idea for CDL, it's an expensive program. Our program costs $5,200 to get through that program. And so that's a tough thing for a lot of people to afford. So to be able to have funding to support them through that program so they don't have to pay a dime out of pocket is amazing. So talking about workforce development and really trying to help with economic development in our state, that's huge. So we really, really appreciate those partnerships. And then how is LCCC collaborating with local employers to align programs with workforce needs? We have lots of different ways we do that. One of the most recent things, and something that I thought was really important when I started, was to send out local needs assessments to find out what are the needs. Are there things we're overlooking? Are there industries we're overlooking? Are there needs that aren't being filled that we could potentially step in and offer? So we did one for Albany County recently and had a pretty good response rate on that. What was interesting on that is I expected to see some specific industry training needs, and what we saw was a lot of soft skill development needs, professional development. That was kind of the main piece of feedback. We're getting ready to launch a needs assessment for Laramie County here within the next couple of weeks. So I will share that with Jen and just make sure it gets distributed out, because we'd love any support on getting the word out on that so that we can get feedback on, are there areas we're missing? What can we do to help with those training needs? We have a workforce advisory group that meets quarterly on campus. We facilitate that group just to kind of get updates from people in terms of what the industry needs are, some trends we might be seeing, ways that we might be able to help with economic development collectively in our communities. So that's a big one. We have pathways advisory committees for each of our different areas. So each trade, like for example, welding is going to have their own advisory committee. CDL has their own advisory committee. Manufacturing has their own advisory committee. We've got advisory committees for our HVAC and plumbing apprenticeships. So really leaning on our employers to help us develop those programs, look at curriculum, give us feedback. We partner, so that second question, which is any new industry specific partnerships being developed, the data centers coming online here in our area in Cheyenne, they are going to have a significant needs for tradesmen moving forward to get these giant data centers constructed. So that's a big piece. But also these controlled environments are critical environments where we need folks who they can hire on to troubleshoot in the HVAC side of things. And they need people for that. So we're working with them to figure out exactly what they need and how we can tailor our training programs to meet their needs. So that's one example. And then I just listed a few partnerships that have come through. Arctic Truck is one that's kind of interesting. That's really fun here in Cheyenne. In our manufacturing space, they they make trucks that can withstand extremely cold temperatures for long periods of time in the Arctic to be able to run there. So that's been a fun partnership. Microsoft, Woodward, Thunder Beast. We have a new partnership with FE Warren to train all of their folks in CDL. I mentioned the Wyoming Department of Education, and the list goes on, but those are just some examples. Next slide, please. Any plans to expand training programs or certifications in high demand fields to meet current labor market needs? And the answer is always to that is yes. We're hoping to keep our finger on the pulse of what the needs will be and what they are. So constantly looking at industry projections, constantly looking at economic forecasts, those kinds of things. Right now, some of the big areas that are high demand are skilled trades, advanced manufacturing, healthcare. And then we have a big push for IT, AI, and tech right now. So those are some big focus areas, but always looking for what the needs might be, emerging trends. The next one, what strategies are being used to engage underserved populations or rural populations? We have lots of different initiatives going on our website. We have our strategic plan is very transparent. There is a piece of our strategic plan for LCCC that is called Unlocking Opportunities. It's really all about reaching populations that are traditionally underserved. So finding unique and ways that we can support those individuals who need it. We have various opportunities for veteran support. In fact, with this new Innovation Center for Entrepreneurship, really looking at how can we be intentional in supporting our veteran population here in our community and other communities we serve. And we also have a first generation program here called the Davis First Generation Program that is really targeted to providing intentional support and wraparound services for first generation college students. So that's a big one. And we have rural engagement across the board. We have an extension office some people don't know about in Pine Bluffs. So we do offer programming in Pine Bluffs and are really trying to engage with those communities in Eastern Laramie County. So that's a big one for us. Next slide, please. Metrics or feedback that LCCC uses to measure the success of the workforce programs, and how does the data shape future offerings? There's lots of different ways that we can access data. So the needs assessments that I mentioned before, we're really looking forward to looking at that data. And then the plan is to deploy those surveys every 3 years. And that's one piece of data. It's certainly not going to give us the entire picture of what the needs are, but one opportunity to maybe receive feedback from another audience. I mentioned the Industry Partner Advisory Committee feedback. That's a little bit more anecdotal. Employment data, job placement data, we track all of that stuff for our grants. And so if we have a program, let's say, for example, that we stand up and we find that our students are not getting jobs when they graduate from those programs, then that's really important for us to come back and retool and reconfigure and figure out, is there another need that needs to be met? Does that program need to be sunsetted and another one started up to fill another need? So, and that just happens. That's kind of the cycle of how we offer those workforce development programs. We also look at student and participant feedback who participate in our training programs. That's an important piece of data to consider. And then obviously the regional and statewide economic and workforce projections. So those are all things that come into play, and I'm probably missing some, to be honest, but those are all things we have to be really strategic in looking at and making sure we're very intentional in how we develop our programs. What's our number one focus area? That's so hard to just pick one. I couldn't just pick one, but under my umbrella and the programs I oversee, advanced manufacturing, entrepreneurship, and skilled trades are the primary areas of focus right now. Next slide, please. What changes have I brought to the position or plans to make now that I've been in the role for a few months? Great question. The Innovation Center has really been front and center because that was the project that was handed to me when I stepped through the door. So that was a big priority and has taken a lot of work, but we're getting there. So that's a big one. Really exciting. Restructuring our internal advisory committee meetings. I really like the next gen model. In fact, we've been working really closely with John and others to kind of figure out how can we take pieces of that model and replicate them in our internal advisory committee meetings, because sometimes what you get, and people can probably, Larry's like, yeah, maybe sometimes you show up to some of these advisory committee meetings and it's a show and tell. And I think sometimes we need to really kind of flip that and have the industry drive some of the conversation, drive the topics, set the agenda, those kinds of things. So that's a really big focus for me. I think, the community needs assessment is a big one for me. That had not been done before, to my knowledge, at least for the workforce development piece of it. So that's a big piece. I think we can also expand that to get feedback on our SEEK programs, our life enrichment programs as well too. Right now, we're just really looking at the industry training, workforce development, business training programs. And then opportunities for us to offer non-credit training concurrently with credit training. So one example of that is in Cheyenne right now, we only as a college offer CNA. in the 4-credit space. So our nursing students get priority to register for that CNA class. I'm not saying that we would, I'm just using this as an example. We may not choose to offer CNA for non-credit, but if we did, then the college would be able to offer the opportunity for community members who may not be interested in the nursing pathway to take the CNA course, get that credential, and go to work as a CNA if they would like to, if that makes sense. So we're looking for more opportunities like that to open up more classes to people who might just want to get trained and get to work. And not jump through all the hoops that it takes to get registered as a 4-credit degree seeking student. And then how did our most successful programs happen? I think just from what I gather, the biggest thing is the community and industry support. That's huge. So making sure that it's meeting the needs of the community, that we have community feedback, stakeholder engagement. Having the right folks at the table is huge. I learned that early in my career. So somebody told me one time, you've got polar bears and you've got penguins, and the penguins are the doers and the polar bears are not the doers. So we want the penguins at the table, right? So those are the people who are really going to make things happen and get the work done. The sustainability plans, we are so fortunate at LCCC that we have a centralized grants office. So we have an office that handles all of our sponsored awards, not only the proposal development, but also then the compliance piece as well. So that is huge for us because it's a capacity issue sometimes, right? For organizations, you can't access funding because you don't have the people who have this, either the skill set or the time to be able to do that. We do have that at LCCC. So I think that's been a strength, and that's been able to lend itself to us being successful just as an institution. And then we just have a very strong leadership team at LCCC. Very, very fortunate. Many of you know Dr. Joe Schaefer. He's just a great leader for us. I think we have the right people at the helm to get the work done. So next slide, please. That's it. And I didn't leave a whole lot of time for questions. I'm so sorry because I know I'm just about out of time, but are there any other follow-up questions I can answer for you? No? Okay. Well, thank you so much for having me. I so appreciate being here and excited to engage this afternoon.
Yes, thank you. And yeah, it's always good to hear so much stuff that you're doing. I'm really excited about the new Innovation Center. So good luck with that.
Thank you so much.
All right. Yep, but again, Tanya's slide deck is on board. So if you want to reach out to her questions, feel free to do so. And the handout. Yep. All right. We're now going to return back to Michael Moore, who's going to give us labor market information and in-demand occupations.
Morning, everyone. Mr. Chairman, members of council, my name is Michael Moore. I am the research supervisor for the research and planning section of the Wyoming Department of Workforce Services. And today I'll be providing a presentation on in-demand occupations, how we identify them, and how we can change the criteria to meet the council's needs. Next slide, please. Just a little bit about R&P. I think a lot of you know kind of who we are. We are an exclusively statistical entity within DWS. We collect, analyze, and publish timely labor market information. We provide this information to the public, legislators, educators, training providers, the media, and more. Next slide, please. Before we really start, I really want to stress the importance in understanding the differences between occupations and industries. These two words sometimes get used interchangeably, and it's important to understand they're not the same thing. These are very different concepts. To begin with, an industry is a group of establishments with similar products or services. So an industry is kind of where you work, and this is how we group businesses. Businesses are grouped by industry. On the other hand, an occupation is a set of tasks that employees are paid to do. So an occupation is what you do. So we group, remember I said we group businesses by industry. Well, we group people and the jobs they do by occupation. Next slide. Thank you. Just some examples of industries are things like healthcare and social assistance, mining, retail trade, leisure, and hospitality. And examples of occupations are things like registered nurses, roustabouts, cashiers, and cooks. And today we'll be focusing on occupations. Next slide. Most occupations are found in multiple industries, and in fact, very few occupations are specific to one industry. So for example, if an individual is a truck driver, they could work in an industry such as transportation and warehousing, mining, construction, retail trade, or just about any other industry. Next slide, please. So this is how we defined our in-demand occupations for this specific project. We looked at our long-term occupational projections from 2022 to 2032, and we looked at the total projected annual openings for nearly 500 different occupations. And we chose occupations with at least 100 total projected annual openings and an average wage of at least $21.07 per hour. Now we chose the minimum wage of $21.07 in this example because the Massachusetts Institute of Technology, MIT, identified $21.07 as a livable wage for Wyoming for one adult with no children. The wage takes into consideration 8 basic needs: food, childcare, healthcare, housing, transportation, civic engagement, broadband, and other necessities. And if you're interested to know more about how they put this together, there's a link to the methodology on the slide. Next slide, please. So this is an example of what we're talking about. This is carpenters, and this is one of our projected in-demand occupations. So when I talked about how 100 total openings was kind of our cutoff for job, so total openings is the sum of job growth, exits, and transfers. And you can, as I read this, you can follow along from left to right on this particular excerpt of this table. Really quick, exits refers to persons leaving the workforce for a variety of reasons. This could be moving, retiring, or leaving the workforce to care for a family member. Transfers refers to people changing occupations. This could be an individual getting a promotion. So employment in carpenters is projected to grow from 3,434 in 2022 to 3,865 in 2032. That's an increase of 431 new jobs. In addition to that, we also see an additional 1,270 openings due to exits and 1,718 openings due to transfers. This gives us a total of 3,419 total job openings in this occupation over the next 10 years. So remember, I said we limited this to occupations with 100 total projected openings. So when we divide that total by 10, we get 342 total projected openings for carpenters each year over the next 10 years. So this is an occupation that typically requires a high school diploma or equivalent, no specific prior experience, and an apprenticeship to enter the occupation. Next slide, please. So we identified nearly 500 occupations in Wyoming for which we have data on total projected openings. We then link that to wage data from our Occupational Employment and Wage Statistics Program, or OEWS. So each dot in this graph, and it's a little hard to see because most of them are clumped up at the bottom there, but each dot in this graphic represents one of those 500 occupations. Employment for each occupation ranged from 1 to nearly 1,500, and that's represented on the vertical axis on the left side. And wages range from around $10 an hour to nearly $70 an hour, which is on the bottom axis. Next slide, please. Our next step was to remove a few outliers so that we could get a better look at the graph. We limited this to occupations with a maximum number of 900 total projected annual openings and an average hourly wage of $60 or less. Next slide, please. So from here, we applied our criteria of 100 total annual openings and a wage of at least $21.07, and that's what these two lines represent. So these two red lines divide the figure in 4 quadrants. Next slide, please. The first quadrant is in the lower left and is shaded in gray in this picture. These are low demand, low wage occupations. This means these are occupations that had fewer than 100 total projected openings and an average hourly wage of less than $21.07. Some examples of these are laundry and dry cleaning workers, ushers and ticket takers, and food servers, non-restaurant. Next slide, please. So the next quadrant, the second quadrant, is in the lower right, and these are low demand, high wage occupations. So these are occupations that had fewer than 100 projected total annual openings, but a wage of at least $21.07 per hour. Some examples of these are chiropractors, property assessors, property appraisers, and economists. Next slide, please. So our third quadrant in the upper left here represents high demand, low wage occupations. So these are occupations with at least 100 annual openings, but they don't meet our threshold of 2107 per hour. So some examples of these are lifeguards, fast food and counter workers, and dishwashers. Next slide, please. So this is where we get to our fourth quadrant, and this is high demand, high wage occupations where we have 100 plus annual openings and at least 2107 per hour. Next slide, please. So this is really our sweet spot. This is how we identified in-demand occupations. These occupations have at least 100 total projected annual openings and an average wage of 2107. And we found 36 occupations that met these criteria. Those are represented here, and each of one of these red dots in this graphic represents one of those in-demand occupations, which you should have received a full list of those 36 occupations. Next slide, please. Just some examples of what's included in that list of in-demand occupations. We have heavy and tractor trailer truck drivers, general and operations managers, bookkeeping, accounting, and auditing clerks, maintenance and repair workers, registered nurses, carpenters, and electricians. Next slide, please. So of these 36 in-demand occupations, 14 are what we identified as high skill. So these are occupations that require more than a high school diploma. Of those 14 occupations, 3 require post-secondary certificate or some college, no degree. And these are occupations like truck drivers, automotive service technicians and mechanics, and bookkeepers. 8 of these occupations require a bachelor's degree. And these include things like general and operations managers, registered nurses, accountants, and construction managers. And finally, 3 of those require only a high school diploma, but they also require an apprenticeship. These are carpenters, electricians, and plumbers, pipe fitters, and steam fitters. Next slide, please. I want to stress again that this is just one example of identifying in-demand occupations. We can change these thresholds to meet the criteria set by the council, other groups, or policymakers. For example, if we lowered our wage down to $18 an hour, but we stuck with 100 total projected annual openings, that would increase the number of in-demand occupations from 36 to 51. Another scenario, if we lower the minimum number of total projected openings to 50, and we keep the wage of 2107, that increases the number of in-demand occupations from 36 to 77. So if you'd like, I can certainly put together different scenarios of these different lists of in-demand occupations, depending on how the thresholds change, and provide those at the next council meeting. Next slide. With that, I'll go ahead and wrap up the presentation. Thank you for inviting me to speak here today. I really wanted to stress the importance of understanding the difference in industry and occupations, and stress that we can provide different examples of in-demand occupations based on the criteria that you give us. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Michael. Great stuff as always. Any questions or discussion around them for council? Yes, Tony.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thanks, Michael, for that. That was a great, squeaky presentation, and appreciate all the detail. I had a thought / request, potentially at the risk of creating extra work, but I'm familiar with that MIT model. It's an excellent model for really showing in a substantive way the way that different wage levels affect or interact with cost of living, not only for the state, but across each county in the state. But that is a living wage calculator. So I just I was curious if you have done any differentiation. There were a few points in the slideshow that said high demand, high wage. And I realize this is somewhat of a matter of opinion, but I don't think that 2107 is a high wage anywhere in the state. And I'm curious, I saw there were a lot of dots scattered on that upper right quadrant. And I'm curious if you've done any like further analysis or stratification on that data. I'd be curious to see of the high demand jobs, which of them are, say, over $40 an hour, or how many are in that 2107 range, et cetera. So I'm not trying to make extra work for you, just curious if you thought about that or looked at it, or maybe next time you do a pass through, it would be interesting to drill down a little further. Thank you.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, members of council, that's certainly one thing we could do. that's certainly one of the thresholds that we would change. And again, the hourly wage, again, we just went with the 2107 based on the MIT, but we can certainly change that. If you look at the list of in-demand occupations, some examples of those that do have the higher wage, I'm looking at it right now. General and operations managers have a wage of $56.87. Scrolling through this, operating engineers and other construction equipment operators, $30.68. Registered nurses, $40.82. First line supervisors of production and operating workers, $44.67. Managers, all other, $56.28. So those wages are included in the list that you got. So one of the things too, if you keep in mind that we use that 2107, by doing that, we only had 36 occupations. So if we start raising that, we really start limiting that number. Again, we could raise that and we could decrease the annual openings to, 50 total annual openings and a wage of, say, $30 an hour. Could certainly look at that and see how many that would produce.
Great. Thank you, Michael. Director Gagan.
What is the utility of this in-demand list? I mean, where do we use it? What is its purpose?
Director Gagan, Mr. Chairman, members of council. So this could be used in a variety of ways. I mean, this could be used to identify in the council's purview, probably to identify which occupations to train for. So there's always discussion about what occupations do we train for? Well, do we train for occupations that have high wages, but we're only going to have 5 openings a year? Or do we focus on those occupations that have the greatest number of projected annual openings?
All right. Any other additional questions from council? Great. Thanks again, Michael, for joining us today. Informative as always.
Thank you, everyone.
Oh, there's one more. Oh, yes.
So I represent the operating engineers. I just noticed that it's operating engineers and other construction equipment operators at $30. We just started an apprentice out of Glen Rock, 18 years old. They just graduated high school at $24.44 an hour with no training, so I just wanted to put that out there that's a little low. Even the wages are quite a bit higher than that. So
thanks for adding. All right. Thanks again, Michael.
Thank you, everyone.
All right. Moving into the last pieces of our agenda, I'm going to hand it over to Jennifer, who's going to give the council a quick update on our strategic plan progress.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the council. I just wanted to give a quick update on the progress for our strategic plan and the strategies outlined in the state plan. So the goal has always been for the core partners and myself to report on progress of the strategies that have been identified as now, as we talked about in the meeting in September. I'll be happy to report we have some core partners who are able to or reported some progress currently. We plan to have a report to the council on our progress on these in January. So that's when we really plan to start reporting. I did want to inform the council that strategy 1.1, so it's not changing the goal at all for, let me pull up this, for Invent an Image. The original strategy was drive more effective relationships in the workforce center and consider rebranding and positioning the workforce centers and WIOA services. This is really 2 strategies in one, as the core partners and members of this council started breaking down what those action items would be. So the rebranding and positioning was moved to the part about that, which is 1.1, developing the key messaging regarding the Workforce Center Council, American Job Centers, and WIOA. They go together. And then strategies 1.1.2 was redefined to say drive more effective relationships in the workforce center. So we made it more, or sorry, not center, but workforce system. We made it more broad because that is the actual items that the council is working on, is making sure that we're working with our required partners, but also partners that make up Wyoming's system. So some of the action items for this is defining what relationships need to be strengthened, identifying ways to strengthen the relationships. One of the things that we're doing right now that will be an hour and a half after the council meeting is the WIOA Partners in Progress Summit. That really is trying to identify who makes up Wyoming's workforce system. And the council is actually tasked, according to federal regulations, with being a convener and identifying who makes up Wyoming's system. So that's fun. We're working on that right now. And then another action item is that we created a survey to send to all of our partners, such as community colleges, the University of Wyoming, their workforce and outreach, but also other organizations, the Business Council, the DWS Business Training and Support Unit, the Department of Corrections, Probation and Parole, workforce advisory groups, our next gen groups, you name it, we're trying to think of it. We're going to start with having the survey this afternoon and trying to gauge from the people who come to this meeting at 1:30. We're going to gauge, primarily this survey is to gauge their current knowledge of WIOA and what services are provided under all the titles. So it's not just Title I, which is adult, dislocated worker and youth, but it also includes vocational rehabilitation and adult basic education and family literacy. So we're really trying to get a temperature of the partners who've agreed to come to the table. Right now we have just over 50 people who have RSVP'd to come to the table at 1:30, but we invite anybody else who didn't RSVP. We're one big happy family. So come back at 1:30 and join this conversation about what makes up Wyoming's workforce system, and just trying to gather what programs are in Wyoming, what gaps we may have, and what organizations who might fill that gaps, and what the conversation looks like going forward. And we've included business as well. So all of you council members had that extra question on your RSVP if you were coming to the council meeting today, to see if you were coming to the meeting at 1:30 too, because it really is important to have the business voice, because you are part of the workforce system and might have some gaps that we haven't already identified. So that's just one example of how the core partners and some members from the council, and we invite you all to join us when we have these core partner meetings. I'll put them in onboard when we have one set and you can join us. We thank Travis Lawrence for joining us, and Ron Goldberg in the last one, and the governor's designee for joining us as well. It helps break these down into action items so that we're moving these strategies forward, that our state plan is no longer a document that sits on a shelf, and that we can also identify some of these strategies that we're working on and we've always been working on, such as, let me pull this up, the one that's reported. So our strategy 2.1, which is streamlined terminology across all systems. TJ from Vocational Rehabilitation, but also Nikki Harper, who sits on this council, has started this already. Previously, they've developed a spreadsheet with terms and acronyms for the title programs. And this spreadsheet is being shared with all the title partners to update the terms so that we're speaking the same language, because the federal government loves to, I'll just take the example of a participant. We talk about that in Title I, that the people who we serve in our workforce centers are participants. But at adult basic education, they call them students. At, and correct me if I'm wrong, Nikki, at vocational rehabilitation, we call them clients. And so it's multiple terms for the same individual. And so we've also reached out. This was one of Corinne at DFS's asks as well, to reach out to not just our core partners, but our required partners, because we need to share, we need to have those referral systems. And it starts with speaking the same language, knowing that we're talking about the same thing, even though we're using different terms. So that's an example of a strategy that's already been working on and has had some success.
Great. Thank you for those updates, Jennifer. Yeah, like I said, these strategic plans shouldn't be just a white paper that says, so we need to act on them and measure them. And again, defining what success is and putting them into buckets. So you're going to see a really big focus as my theme next year is going to be really putting that plan into action and how we're going to make it come to life. So. All right, we are moving into the final part of our Q4 meeting. And so as usual, we're going to be doing kind of a speed run for our subcommittee breakouts. And so I'll give you until 11:40. So it's about 12 minutes to meet with your subcommittees before we reconvene and get updates. I know. So yeah, gotta go. And let's go ahead and have the Strategic Performance and Finance Committee over on that side. The community relations here, and then let's have the next gen sector partnerships there. So I'll bring you all back together at 11:40. All right, subcommittee, start wrapping up your conversations. We'll bring everyone back together here shortly. One minute and then the gavel comes. All right. Let's bring everyone back and get our updates, please. Well, I guess it's a good problem to have that it's hard to get you out of your subcommittees. As you all know, a lot of the work that goes on behind the scenes, outside of our formal whole body council meetings are in our subcommittees, and it's always good to see the folks that we get to see every month, actually in person. So we're going to go ahead and do some updates from the chairs. Danny's not unfortunately able to join us today, so I will speak on behalf of the Communications and Community Relations Committee. Just a few things for all of you to know. Something that we decided on, voted on earlier this year, is to not continue the contract with Warehouse 21. And they're the vendor that we use to build and maintain our website. Numbers are going up. Also, we looked at it as an opportunity to do somewhat of a rebrand and kind of take a little bit more ownership of the council's website. So I know a lot of the committees at DWS right now are looking into what that new vendor is going to look like. But our goal is in a year to have a really nice, concise website. And also kind of speaking to what Rochelle spoke to earlier today is making it so easy for our council to be able to be able to understand the programs and services we offer, as we have all these economic development agencies out there who want to sell our stuff and make it really easy for them. And then also for those employers to go, oh, that's really cool. Apprenticeships and internships. So stay tuned on some website news coming out next year. The next one is that we did get some feedback, and I totally agreed with it, that we're also due for a brand redesign. If you look at our current council brand, it gets frequently confused with the Wyoming Business Council logo, because they look very, very similar colors, similar style. And so whether or not we decide to redo the council brand in-house or if we look for vendor, more news to come on that. And then obviously our largest project, which you saw the preview of this morning, is Forge the Future. So, there's going to be a lot of activity as those film crews are going around the state and interviewing the folks around Wyoming and putting together these really high quality, high impact videos. They will be hosted on the state website, but a great opportunity for us to also tie that into our new council website. So we're going to try to hopefully coordinate with a new brand, a new website, and then, it'd be also great to launch Forge the Future alongside of all of that. So it'd be really cool for the council to really show off all the great work that we've done. So that's kind of what's up in our committee for this update. And I'll go ahead and pass it over to Chair Tony Cross to give us an update on sector partnerships and career pathways.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We had a very short meeting today. We are going to be discussing at our next meeting. We'll be making a decision on the location and requested budget for the 2025 Next Gen Sector Partnership Academy, which some of you have attended in the past. Last year it was here in Cheyenne in this room. So we will be thinking about that, working on that, and coming up with a decision that will then make its way to the council, hopefully at our next full council meeting. We discussed our previous desire to have some guardrails around how we evaluate next sector partnership grant requests. So without going into the weeds, Travis, that's still on your list. Still a request to the Strategic Performance and Finance Committee that we work on that a little bit going forward. And then we had a great conversation that kind of led towards the subject of living wage. So I wanted to share Katie, who I believe is now a member of our committee. Thank you. Mentioned something I was unaware of. We were talking about the MIT living wage calculator from Michael's presentation. And she mentioned a tool called the Self-Sufficiency Calculator, which is on the website of the Wyoming Women's Foundation. I don't know if you want to say anything more about it, Katie, but I wanted to just mention that to anyone interested in that tool. And that's other than that, that's it for my update. So thanks.
Thanks, Tony. Just really quickly, that calculator is very geographically and Wyoming accurate and specific. So it's a great tool if you're navigating the benefit cliff effect for your participants or clients, and just gives you a really accurate viewpoint of what a livable wage in Wyoming is. I really recommend it. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you for those updates. I'm going to hand it over now to Chair Travis Lawrence for an update from our Strategic Performance and Finance Committee.
Thank you, E.T. I'm very proud of our committee and kind of how we've evolved and the direction that we're going. For the better part of this year, we've kind of spent some time educating ourselves on the processes and what goes in behind them, such as the ETPL process. And then today we focused more on the finance side of things and what can we do better to deliver that information to you as a council. And so this next month during our monthly meeting, we're going to have a brainstorming session as to how we want to present those financials and make them more pertinent to all of you versus just numbers on a page, because numbers on a page mean nothing without a narrative. So making the financials more granular, having bullet point explanations on, what's changed month to month when various grants come in, tracking the expenditure report to the budget. And so kind of maybe a hybrid report. So I guess my request to all of you is if you do have any ideas for our brainstorming session next month, please shoot us a message on board or and we will take that into consideration.
Great. Thank you for those updates. And thank you again all for working really hard in your monthly subcommittee meetings. And we are now moving on to the second to the last agenda item for this meeting, which is public comment. So is there anyone from the public that would like to speak either online or in person? We're checking online. Do we have any questions online? All right. Any council business that we should discuss before we wrap? I want to call out Ron. So first of all, Ron, I know you didn't want me to do it, but I'm going to do it. But this is actually Ron's last in-person council meeting. Ron will be with us hopefully in January. But we definitely want to thank Ron, even though you still got one more to go and you still got many committees to come, just thank you again for being here and all of your service to the council.
Thank you. And just because I term out doesn't mean that I go away. Call me if you need me.
Yes, I am sure we will hear for you. And I think we all have 4 of your business cards. So you all have Ron's contact information for sure. And then actually, Ron, do you want to speak to what's the significance of this weekend?
So the significance of this weekend is Monday is Veterans Day. So while you're out there, remember all of the guys over on the base and overseas and so forth, and give a few minutes for them. And then I've got one other comment that I would like you to consider. Come over and hang out with Dooley, take a selfie, and support Cowboys Against Cancer.
Thank you, Ron. Yes, I would recommend it as soon as we adjourn, if we just all do like a quick little group photo with the gorilla over there, and that'll be good. So we highly recommend that you join us. Any other council things that we need to be aware of? Yes, Brenda?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I would just like to announce for everybody that National Apprenticeship Week, they're celebrating the 10th anniversary of recognizing National Apprenticeship Week, the Department of Labor. That'll be November 17th through the 23rd. Some apprenticeships, including myself, will have various events during that week. You can always go to the Department of Labor's registered apprenticeship site to see what events have been registered. And then Ivy and her group are also putting on their site any events. So if you know of an apprenticeship, you have an apprenticeship like mine, please let them know if you have events. It's a great way to educate students, parents, teachers about the great opportunities for apprenticeship in the state and in the country.
Absolutely. Thank you, Brenda. Any other things that we should know about as a council? Someone have news or reminders?
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir.
Just a quick update on the plumbing apprenticeship that's going on in the prison up in Torrington. We went up and met with those apprentices. They started with 6, they're down to 5, because they're not putting up with any behavior unbecoming to the apprenticeship, I guess. But we reviewed their lab, came up with tool lists on what they're missing. Those tools are being provided by private industry now. And we've got suppliers on board that are supplying them with all their rough-in materials and things like that. So they're doing a really great job up there. We're hoping this continues. This first class appears to be very successful. So they hope to continue that.
That's great news. Thanks for sharing, Larry. Great. All right, and then I get just some quick housekeeping closing comments from myself. Just again, thanking all of you for your participation. This is a volunteer board. I love seeing the energy and the ideas and the partnerships that you all make, not only in your communities, but then also when we get together. It's just so valuable. And again, we continue to I encourage a culture of fearless feedback. If there are ways that we can make the council run more efficiently, even our meeting structure, again, we've been trying to dial in just a few little things. I think something we'll kind of consider too is, maybe extending some more time for the subcommittee breakouts. I think would be great to, again, they're so valuable. So, 12 minutes really isn't enough to meet with your teams in person. So small things like that. Just reminding you that you will get a meeting survey within the next couple of days via Onboard. And I do highly encourage, what did you like about this, Councilman? Did you feel it was effective? Did we go too fast here, too slow there? We should have done this. We're not taking it personally. We really, truly want to make this a wonderful working council. So definitely stay on board with Onboard. We'll continue our communications there. And then also something that you might see here the next month or two, you might be invited to some optional executive session committees. This is where we're going to take a little bit of time outside of the quarterly meetings to kind of maybe drill down a little bit deeper into certain topic areas. Things like the bylaws. Are there opportunities for us to revise, to add? Because bylaws are really important to me. They truly are kind of our user instructions guide to how the council runs and works. So what we might do is we might have some topic areas that you have the option to join. They will be recorded, and then also give you time as a council to have any kind of input, before we bring it to the whole body at a full council meeting. So just kind of be on the lookout. We're going to kind of have some optional sessions maybe popping up around different things that we obviously just don't have the time in these meetings to really go too deep into. And yes, just thanks again, everyone, for the photo off. So we'll be getting your headshots out there. And I'm looking forward to seeing all of those. Let me just see if I didn't miss anything else. And I just want to, as always, give a huge shout out to our partners over in the Department of Workforce Services for really, truly day to day going in and out to help our participants and in providing the updates and doing all the massive amounts of work that it takes to keep this department running. And, we as your council are here to try to, support you in any way that we can and provide you that vision to truly make Wyoming the best that it can be, right? That's what she deserves. So, and we're going to give it to her. All right. With that being said, I would welcome a motion to adjourn.
Moved.
All right. So moved by Ron Well. Do I have a second? All right. Seconded. All in favor to adjourn, please say aye. I know we don't need it, but I think it's fun. Aye. All right. No nays. Have a great safe travel back. We'll see you on Zoom in January. And get over the photo here, and we'll see you all in person in Riverton in May.